So welcome everyone. I call this meeting of the Atascadero City Council to order. And Councilmember Darris, would you please lead us in a pledge to the flag?
Sure. There's our flag. All right, please stand and join me and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bourbeau.
Here.
Councilmember Darris.
Here.
Councilmember Funk.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
Here.
Mayor Moreno.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Well, if you are watching or listening this evening to our City Council meeting, welcome. And if you would like to speak during a time that is set aside for community forum or during any one of the public comment opportunities during any one of our agenda items, you can do so in a couple of ways. If you're on the webinar tonight, you can simply use the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. Or if you happen to be listening on KPRL, watching on channel 20, you can simply call 805-538-2888 and then let us know what item or if it's community forum that you would like to speak on when you call in. And once again, the number is 805-538-2888. Let's see, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So move. I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Funk and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom, and we will waive the reading in full of all ordinances appearing on this agenda. And the titles of the ordinances will be read aloud by the city clerk at the first reading after the motion and before the city council votes. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes.
Councilmember Bourbeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Darris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And at our last meeting, we recessed at our general meeting and went into closed session. And we said we would let the public know if there's any reportable action from that November 23rd meeting at this meeting. So I would like to bring on our city attorney, Mr. Pierrick, and if you could let us know if there's anything reportable from our November 23rd closed session.
There was no reportable action.
Thank you. We'll move on. We have no presentations this evening. So the next item is our consent calendar. And consent calendar items are considered routine and non-controversial by city staff, and they can be approved in one motion if there's no member of the council or public who wishes to comment or ask questions. And if anyone does desire to comment or ask questions, we'll remove that item and consider it separately from the rest. So I will look at my council colleagues and see if there's anyone wishing to pull question. No? All right. If there's anyone in the webinar, if you'd like to comment or pull an item on the consent calendar, you can raise your hand. If you're on the phone, press *9. Luke, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
All right. Thank you. We'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilmember Bourbeau, second by Councilmember Funk. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bourbeau.
Yes.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes.
Councilmember Darris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And we are now on to updates from the city manager, and our deputy city manager, Terry Banish, will be providing the updates this evening, which is so appropriate because she's responsible for so many of the things that we talk about during the update.
Thank you, Mayor Moreno. Thank you, Council. Good evening. So I'm going to share my screen real quick here and make sure that you can see that. Let me know if you can see it. Yay. Okay, fantastic. So we have quite a few.
Wait, oh, there we go. All right. It took a second. We're good.
Quite a few updates happening as far as, you know, what we just went through with, hang on one second. Okay, there we go. Sorry about this. Okay, before we get started in all the fun, we've had a storm and we're going to have a little bit more rain coming. So there's some stormy weather precautions and sandbags that are available as well. So sand to fill your sandbags is available at Fire Station 1 and over at the city's yard on Garbata Avenue off of Cabrillo. And be sure to bring your own bags and bring a shovel. Sandbags are available at most local hardware stores. Miners Ace and Home Depot are just a few. As far as flooding and down limbs or trees in the streets, those can be reported by calling the city's Public Works Department during regular weekday business hours. That's the 48, or call the non-emergency line for our police department at 461-5051 anytime. And if it's an emergency, such as a blocked road or down power line, please call 911. And that is our stormy weather precautions. We also have this posted on our city's Facebook page, as well as our Instagram page. Winter Wonderland was a hit, so we're going to transition into that right away, as well as the pop-up reindeer farm that Santa brought to us. So we have many happy families that were seen Friday night, enjoying all of the attractions at Winter Wonderland throughout Sunken Gardens and the downtown. Attendance was like it was in 2019. Many enjoyed 75 tons of snow that we brought in. There were many people to thank to pull an event like this together, and we appreciate every single one of those folks involved. From our nonprofit organizations to our sponsors, a special thank you to Kiwanis Club of Atascadero for working hard to get the snow slide in place with the hay, with the snow, and also tearing it down. But again, there's a lot of other folks that were involved. The reindeer were also a hit over at the Charles Paddock Zoo. From the very minute they landed, visitors were in line to check out our guests from the North Pole. Many families will have great photos to share this holiday season, and they were able to feed them graham crackers and pet them too. So that was a ton of fun. We also have our Trail of Lights that are going on right now. The winners of the Trail of Lights contest were announced at Winter Wonderland. Best use of theme, first place was 5432 Atalia Street. I said it wrong, Atalaya Street, sorry. Second place was 3015 Avenida del Sol. The most creative light display, first place was 3950 San Anselmo. Second place, 9071 Palomar. And then the best overall light display, honorable mention goes to Colony Mortgage, but first place went to 2720 Ferro Carril Road. And that is just an outstanding light display. Winners will be receiving their ribbons and gift certificates on Thursday at their front doorsteps between the hours of 4 and 5:30. We encourage everybody to go onto the Trail of Lights. It's happening now through December 25th, nightly from 5 to 8 p.m. Great opportunity to go caroling and do, get in that kind of holiday spirit. So good opportunity to do that. Holiday Magic, the Charles Paddock Zoo will be celebrating Holiday Magic this coming Saturday, December 18th from 10 a.m. until 1 p.m. Our zookeepers will be temporarily transformed into elves and help our animals enjoy opening their very special holiday gifts. They'll also be able to enjoy a magician that will be strolling around, enjoy holiday music by Gary Brill, and check out the Cockroach Holiday Village display. Of course, we got to have the Cockroach Village, and that should be pretty cool. Also, an opportunity to explore the great holiday gift ideas at the zoo's gift shop. And if that's not all, purchase your zoo membership. Now is a good time. They make great stocking stuffers for the holidays. The memberships range from a family for $100. That includes 2 adults and 4 children, to an individual for $50. There's also a premium level too. And these memberships are good for other zoos all over, and it lists all the different zoos. So go online to charlespaddockzoo.org and you'll find out more information there. We're also doing our Amazon gift giving again for the zoo animals themselves. So if you want to get a gift for one of our zoo animals, go on to charlespaddockzoo.org. And then, as always, go to visit atascadero.com and click on events for all the event information that's coming up. That's all I have. Any questions?
I will look to council if there's any questions. Seeing none, excellent report. Thank you. And thanks for all that we have going on. You and your team do a fantastic job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so we are now on to community forum. This is the portion of our meeting that is reserved for persons who are wishing to address the council on a matter that's not on this agenda tonight, but over which the council has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you would state your name for the record before making your presentation. Any comments made during community forum will not become a subject for discussion, and we will allow a maximum of 30 minutes for community forum. And if you've got any questions that you don't get answered tonight, or you don't speak for some reason, you can always contact the city clerk's office at 805-470-3400 or cityclerk@atascadero.org. And we will go ahead and turn the sound, or turn the little timer on so you can see the time that you have available for speaking. And with that, I already see some people in the queue. I will start with, and if you don't know, you can raise your hand with that little icon at the bottom there. And if you're on the phone, you can press *9. So I see, let's go with Maggie Payne, and then someone on the phone, and then to Sheila New. We'll go in that order. So Maggie Payne, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good evening. My name is Maggie Payne. I'm here from the We Are the Care initiative. As 2021 comes to a close, we've taken some time to reflect back on the progress that's been made throughout this year. And while solving the childcare crisis must remain a top priority, many steps have been taken this year to support children and families in SLO County, in addition to the early care professionals who serve them. Tonight, we hope to highlight one such success for you all: the launch of the Family-Friendly Workplace Accelerator position through the SLO Chamber of Commerce. With funding from First Five in the County of SLO, the program has hit the ground running. Christina Lefevre-Latner is heading up the Family-Friendly Workplace Accelerator program as its workforce development manager. Since the launch of the program in October, she has met with more than 20 businesses and organizations countywide to promote the advantages of becoming more family-friendly and discuss how they can join the movement. This program is open to provide resources and support for any businesses throughout the county that are interested in exploring, implementing, and/or expanding their family-friendly workplace practices in order to attract and sustain a strong, inclusive local workforce. The program is provided to businesses free of charge and is built on the belief that increasing family friendliness is essential to supporting business success, growing our economy, and to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workforces. Research indicates that family-friendly employers benefit from reduced employee healthcare costs, lower absenteeism, and more resilient, happier, and healthier employees. Implementation of these policies will enhance the community overall and help to reduce the negative impact that the childcare crisis that we've talked to you for so long about has on our local workforce. Interested businesses can start out by accessing our family-friendly workplace toolkit at slowfamilyfriendlywork.org, and then they can sign up and get involved by contacting Christina at the SLO Chamber of Commerce. Christina was instrumental in the creation of the Family-Friendly Workplace Toolkit, and we know that she will remain an essential part of our movement to help better support the children and families here in SLO County. For more ways to get involved with We Are the Care, please contact First Five SLO County or go to first5slo.org. Thank you all so much for your time. We'll be back again in 2022 with more information and updates. Hope you all have a happy holiday season. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Payne. Let's go to the individual on the phone. Luke, I think I saw that hand come up first. If you could bring that person on.
Yes, we have Jeff Oslin on the line.
Good evening, Council, and our great mayor of the city of Atascadero. This is Jeff Oslin, resident business owner. I spoke to you folks about 2 months ago about how great the city of Atascadero is becoming for restaurants and activity, and that things are happening here, and we do not need to go elsewhere any longer, and that is a great thing going on. We do have in my opinion, a little minor problem because things are so active in our town. That is, the downtown is doing so well, and because of the pandemic, I think it's time for us to start considering putting in a few pickup zones on Entrada and around the downtown. So when people want to go down and get soup or get something from a restaurant or pick something up from the brewery or Anna and Company, that there is a couple of spots that are designated for 15-minute parking rather than 2-hour parking, which seems to be full. And this way, I think we could solve a parking issue pretty quickly and not have to wait for El Camino to be redone. And especially with La Plaza starting to open up, it would be very helpful for all of us to have a quick spot to pull into and pull out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Oslin. And now I see Sheila New up next.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, this is Sheila New, and I'm on the Atascadero Printery Board, and I'm also a member of Questers. And if you haven't heard about Questers before, Questers is a group that enthusiastically support preservation and restoration projects in their areas. There are 22 chapters in California, and they're throughout the US and Canada. Our local group, Agua Caliente, has supported the Rios Caledonia, the Estrella Adobe Church, and various projects associated with the Paso Robles Historical Society. There are 2 other groups in our county, and they have supported the Adobes around the county and contributed to the Slow Lighthouse and the New Monday Club doors. Our group chose to support the Printery in early 2020. We saw the potential in this beautiful building, and we shared it at our state council meeting in March of that year. Just got right in there before the pandemic hit. So the members recognized that this historically important building should be preserved and unanimously voted to support the Printery as their California Questers state project. And if you've driven by, you might have seen our sign out front. Our first project is the restoration of the front copper-clad doors and transoms. We're very excited to be contributing to the preservation of this building. We'd like to ask the city to recognize that this building played a huge part in the creation of Atascadero and will play a huge part in the future in attracting heritage tourism and enhancing the lives and economic vitality of our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. New. I see Deborah McCrell.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight, I just wanted to also bring to your awareness all the great improvements that are being made at the Atascadero Printery. We've been transforming that building to soon be a modern community facility with a venue for the performing arts, which is really important for our town to be able to have that and support our youth as well as our musicians. And they're going to be putting in a museum and office spaces, and it'll be great for the whole community. So I just wanted to encourage you to support it in any way you can with any funds and availability so that we can enjoy it, all of us, in a great community atmosphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. McCrell. Anyone else who would like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Greg Ravat.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Ravat,
Okay,
just fine.
thank you. This is only going to take 30 seconds, so I just wanted to give you an update on the Printery project. We've been working with Dave in building and Phil in planning for the last couple of years. We're currently finishing up our permitting phase for strengthening the building. So we have seismic strengthening plans that have been going through plan check for the last couple months, and we hope to be done with that soon. We've also done all the hazardous material studies on the building. So we've got the hazmat reports turned into to the city. So we are actually hoping funding permitting to start strengthening this spring. We're completing the shoring right now. So we're doing the last phase of the shoring, which is the additional strengthening, holding the building up until we do get it strengthened. And that's really my report tonight. So I just want to let you know that we're making progress over there. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Mr. Ravat. I see Karen McNamara followed by V. Pierce.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for having the public comment and allowing us to speak tonight. You're going to hear some more from B, and you've heard from others tonight that the Printery is important to our community, and we are here to tell you that we are working with Senator Laird's office, Assemblyman Cunningham's office, the San Luis Obispo County offices, and Congressman Carvajal's office. Now, we've gotten the support of all of these different legislators, representatives of ours, And along with the community, they're seeing that the printery is an important project to Atascadero, to our community, to our students. We know that the printery sits as a not very pretty thing at the edge of two schools, at the edge of our downtown, and we want to eliminate that blight as fast as possible. But to do that, we're going to need some support. And so we're here tonight to urge the council to place the Atascadero Printery Foundation on a future agenda so that we can have an open discussion with the council of any possible way that we might add the city into the list of those that are supporting us, and that we can see if there's any support either financially or with staff time possible from the council and from the city, so that we can complete this project, make this a wonderful asset to our community, and open those doors to everyone for all the programs for our kids, our family. We just believe our community should have this amazing asset to everyone, open to everyone. So we're asking for that, like I say, to be placed on the agenda in the near future.
Thank you, Ms. McNamara. Are you complete?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. V. Pierce, followed by Catherine Hillman.
Hello?
Yes, Ms. Pierce, you are live.
Okay, thank you. My name is V. Pierce, and I joined the Atascadero Printery Foundation as their fundraising committee chairperson in December of 2020. The pandemic has made me realize two things. One, the arts are important. The arts have brought me comfort, joy, and hope during these challenging times. Two, opportunities to come together are important and necessary. I have 3 children in the Atascadero Unified School District, and I see so many opportunities to have the printery support our community and children. Our instrumental music students, particularly the jazz ensemble, strings, and concert band at the high school, need a place to perform. Our students also need a place for drama productions and choir performances and assemblies. Boosters and nonprofit organizations can have a place to hold events and fundraisers. At our November 14th annual meeting and founders reception, we announced that we received a matching gift of $100,000 in memory of Galen Little. I'm proud to announce tonight that we have raised $57,000 towards that match. We are making great strides. I'm reaching out to you and anyone who is watching to ask you to help us. We need funds, but we also need partners who can open doors and help us build relationships with people who can help us make this dream of restoring the printery a reality. Atascadero has come together to do a lot of wonderful things, getting a new library, opening the Parents for Joy playground, putting on free community events like Winter Wonderland and Colony Days. Let's make the printery a community space for the performing arts, art classes, and events. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Catherine Hillman.
There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So I live right next door to the printery. And while I am also on the printery board, I do want to chime in as a neighbor to say that this is an absolutely fantastic project. And the neighbors are all very excited for this project to be realized. We look forward to the day that when we can wander downtown to the downtown area, grab a bite to eat in local restaurants, and then catch a show at the printery. It's going to be an amazing addition to the downtown area, and we are all really excited for the future of this project. And I just want to thank you for your support of the printery. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hillman. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? We still have some time left, so please raise your hand. I see Gina Sirocco. My apologies if I got that name wrong, followed by Brenda May. So Gina.
Hi there, it's Sirocco. I am also an Atascadero Printery board member, but I have lived in Atascadero for over 31 years, and my daughter also attended the Fine Arts Academy. And while going to the school, I would drive past the printery every day to drop her off and pick her up. And I always hoped that it would somehow be an addition to the community that the schools could use and the senior citizens and everyone in the community. It could be a place where people of all ages could come together at a very minimal cost to enjoy different art programs and community events. So I would just ask that the city council and the city itself put us on an agenda to discuss opportunities where we can work together to help make this a community space, because sponsorship from the city itself can open up doors that we as a nonprofit can't reach, can't open ourselves, and just be part of that network that's both city, state, and maybe federal help can be obtained. So just consider that, and we appreciate everything that you can do to help us make this a community center that will better Atascadero as we move forward.
Thank you. I had seen Brenda May's hand. Brenda, if you would like to speak, we would be happy to hear from you. There she is, Brenda.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
I just want to say, as a member of APAC, we are in full support of the Printery. That is the future of our performing arts area, where we could have a dinner house and plays and support the community in every way that has been mentioned. We are in full support of this happening, and we hope that somehow the city will step in and come behind this. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? You can raise your hand using the raise hand icon, or press *9 if you're on the phone. I am not seeing anyone else. Luke, is there anyone on the phone right now?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. So, let's see, we're kind of doing something new here with Community Forum. So what we're going to do right now, since we have no one else wishing to speak at this time, Community Forum will remain open until 6:40 p.m. So what we will do is I'll make a few notes here, but we'll move on to then the next agendized item. But if there's anyone else that would like to speak, you can raise your hand in the webinar or call 805-538-2888 before that 30-minute period has ended. And then the council will recognize speakers who have reached out during that 30-minute community forum period, which, like I said, is up until 6:40, as soon as the current item being discussed has been completed. I do see Ms. McNamara's hand. We don't typically bring people back up for a second time, but you didn't use your full time. And so if there's something you needed to add, I'd be happy to bring you back on and have you do that.
Hello, Council. I just wanted to ask if there would be, is there any answer or time frame that we would know to our request?
And thank you. I will address everything as we close out Community Forum. So
thank you so much.
If there's nothing else. Okay, thank you very much. So as I said, it will remain open to 6:40. If anyone wants to speak, raise your hand, call in 805-538-2888, and we will address that at the next available option. So with regards to the comments made, I really do, I encourage the members of the Printery to reach out to staff. I know that staff has worked with you. We try, when we come across opportunities, we want to be able to share those with you. However, part of the challenge is just like any really good project, needed project, an important project in our town, there are a lot of good and important things going on in Atascadero. And as several of you mentioned, a lot of things get done because people come together. And so while as a city, we have always supported the Printery, the Friends of the Printery and the foundation and pulling everything together. I will say I'm so glad that you're able to connect with Senator Laird and Assemblyman Cunningham and Congressman Carbajal, because they are the ones that have the funding. They have the kind of means that we as a city don't have. And in terms of agendizing something, we as a council set some priorities back at the beginning of this year for a 2-year period. And so we're pretty clear about where we need to focus. And just because we're not focused on the Printery doesn't mean that we don't think it's really important. It's that not every important thing can make it onto the agenda that we have to do and that staff has to work on. Because the minute we as a council say, oh, we like this and let's put this on the plate, we then have to take other things off. So that's a really big discussion that we would have to have. And we are pretty committed to moving forward in the direction that we are. But I do encourage you to reach out to staff if there is something else. Somebody mentioned sponsorship, I think I had written down, and I don't know what that entails. If that's monetary, that is going to be a challenge. But if sponsorship is putting our name to something and saying, you know, hey, we're behind you and we support this, that's different. So please let us know what that entails. Reach out to staff, and we want to have that conversation with you. All right. Let's see. Now we are going to move on to our public hearings. We have 3 of them this evening. And our first one is the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Draft Recommendations. And I will start by asking if we have any ex parte on this item. I'm seeing none. I had, well, we all received an email, so I can just state that for all of us from a property owner here in Atascadero. And I did have a conversation with Wendy Lewis from ECHO. I wasn't seeing, Councilmember Funk, sorry, I saw you just raise your hand.
Yeah, I also had some dialogue by email with Wendy Lewis at ECHO.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. All right, and we will move this on to our Public Works Director, Mr. Nick DeBar.
Thank you, Mayor Moreno. Can you guys all see the screen here?
Yes, we can.
Great. So a little background on the Community Development Block Grant. It wouldn't be, you know, an annual thing if I didn't say this is a Public Works block grants. I'm just kidding. It's big at Phil and his staff. Anyway, we actually participate with the other local agencies in the county in this urban county program. It's administered locally by SLO County Planning Department, and they solicit applications. They do a lot of this work that all the other agencies were doing on their own before. And it actually does streamline the process a lot more. It allows the applicants, you know, that, you know, apply to multiple agencies, some streamlining efforts as well. These monies are federal monies, so there's a lot of strings attached and a lot of reporting attached. You know, they're funded from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Really, these block grants are annual grants that must meet 3 criteria. So these are some of the criteria that, you know, a council should be mindful when they're making awards. 1 is a benefit to lower and moderate income persons. 2 is aid in prevention or elimination of blight. And 3 is they may address urgent needs that pose a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community. So every year this number changes, and just a little background for those who haven't seen this presentation before. We usually come to council in December with draft recommendations. And then these are estimated amounts. So this year it's $139,465 total to Atascadero that the city is able to allocate. And then in March, this is an estimate, the formulatory formula that HUD uses to come up with this number is way too complicated. Even myself as an engineer would have difficulty understanding how they come up with it, but there is some fairness to it. But this amount goes up and down. It's about 5,000 less than it was last year. And it's broken up into 3 basic categories, and they have percentages. So the biggest percentage is for public facilities and housing projects. So this is actual related to capital improvements or, something tangible, infrastructure. And that's a minimum of 65%. So take 65% of the 139,465 and you get $90,652. The other portion is public services and administration. So public services, they're capped at 15% max. So this year of that estimated amount is $20,920. And then administration, as I mentioned, these are federal grant programs. So there's a lot of reporting, a lot of oversight, a lot of process to deal with this program. And as I mentioned, the county is part of that urban share program. So the county has 13% of 20%, and then the city has 7%. So that total is 27,893. The county's share is fixed. The city share, we end up billing our time to these programs, and we use that amount pretty routinely or very closely. I know last year we used all of that 7% administration share. As I mentioned, these are estimates right now. Final amounts are expected in early 2020 by HUD. We will come back in March with final recommendations that the council will make. So this will be another swing at this. I don't have any information on the other cities. Some of them have already, made their draft recommendations. And that's one of the reasons we come back to seek final recommendations, because then a lot of those, the county will compile all those recommendations and we'll kind of see where everybody's at. So everybody that is out offered some assistance, the county typically, there's an $8,000 minimum grant award, and the county usually helps them get there. So the county has a little more, I guess, discretion with their funding. Oh, and I might add that typically in the past, when we come back to the council in March, there's a prorated share. So if this 139,465 total is going to be different from that, those awards are all proratedly, adjusted to the actual number. So this is a table showing the applications received, and with your packet, you should have gotten all the applications from all these applicants. And there were 2 applications for the public facilities and housing project category. The city of Atascadero, the Santa Rosa Accessibility and Barrier Removal Project, and then People Self-Help Housing, the Del Rio Ridge Project, which is just north of Emerald Ridge or south of Del Rio on the east side of the road. It's a low to moderate income housing development project that's proposed. And they have cities requesting $95,000. People Self-Help is requesting $139,465. The cap is $90,652. So at the time of these applications, we don't really know what that estimated amount is, but again, that 90,000 will change. 90,652. Public services, there's $20,920 available. City of Atascadero, the youth activity scholarships. This is something that, along with the sidewalk projects that the city applies for in the public facilities category, is needed to aid the kids that want to participate or have some financial challenges to do that. But $12,500. ECHO, these are towards their operational expenses. There's $13,000 they're requesting. 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, This would be for subsistence payments, homeless assistance, $2,100 is what they're asking. And then people self-help housing. This would be for the county supportive housing program, and they're requesting $21,383. As I mentioned in your packet, there's more detail on these applications, and all the applicants have been notified of this meeting tonight. We sent out an email, made contact with some of them, so they're probably listening and are willing to answer any questions regarding their applications, more so than what I could tell you. And then that last category, administration, 27,893. These are kind of fixed costs, as I mentioned. There are two, fund balances from previous allocated projects. On the bottom there, the 2018 trafficway accessibility project we completed, turned out really good. Cleaned up the corner, really addressed, in my opinion, probably the biggest sidewalk, issues that we have in town. But we're recommending or requesting that these reallocations have to go to the public facilities and housing project categories. So there's $24,847 there. And then 2020 youth scholarship reallocation to the 2022 Santa Rosa accessibility project. Both of those reallocations, there's $277. But as I mentioned, federal program, every dollar counts here and needs to be accounted for. So total reallocation of $25,124. Just to give a plug with the Santa Rosa accessibility project, this has had some funding already from CDBG. It's actually the sidewalk near the Motel 6. It's on the north side of Santa Rosa between the northbound on-ramp and El Camino Real. And there you can see in the first picture there on the left, it's looking up towards the freeway from El Camino. And then the opposite way on the right picture there. So you can see it's a very narrow sidewalk. There's some issues there. The sidewalk has a lot of displaced joints and everything else. So here's also some of the funding for this project previously that the council has given. It was actually first applied for in 2019. And then if some of you were council members then, but there was the HEAP, remember that exchange with Paso and washing some of that with ECHO and everything, was actually draft awarded in 2019 for the 2019, but then was kind of reversed to kind of deal with some of those ECHO expansion and some of the Paso, warming shelter center up there. So in 2020, the following year, had $114,566 allocated or awarded to it. There's also a reallocation of the 2020 admin, some remaining costs, $4,800, and then some scholarship remaining money of a little over $1,000 for total current funding for that is $120,389. This project is closer to the range of, the $225,000 to $250,000 estimated cost. It's under design right now, and we have a good project estimate, engineer's opinion of probable cost. And it's, as I mentioned, it's close to 250. So the request for 95,000, and then the reallocations adds another $120,124, and gets close to that estimate of $250,000. So that's, give a little plug there, and because I'm guessing the council would ask me a little bit about this project anyways. But with that, the recommendation is for the council to develop and adopt these draft funding recommendations. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of back and forth with some of the applicants. And I have a spreadsheet when the council is ready to start making the request. I can plug those in like we've done in the past and kind of look at that on that Excel spreadsheet. So with that, I can answer any questions. I'll turn it back to you, Mayor Moreno.
Thank you, Director. And on one of your slides, you said the final allocation, total amount will be available in early 2020, but what you meant was 2022, right?
Oh, yes.
Confirm that, yeah. Just in case anybody was confused and thinking, what?
We should know we should have already known by now, right?
Please no, we don't want to revisit 2020. I think what kind of pops out to some folks, and I know myself, and I'm assuming some of my colleagues have asked about it, we see the reallocation of some scholarship funds from 2020. And in one spot it says 2022, but I think we're talking 2020 funds. And maybe, I don't know if you or someone else could speak to that, because that's something that as a council, we typically have always fully funded or mostly funded those youth activity scholarships, since the CDBG funds are the only type of funding that those scholarships receive. And with COVID, of course, that shut down the need for that, which we didn't know at the time. So that's kind of why we're seeing that allocation, I'm assuming. I don't know if you or someone could speak to that so that the council and the public have a better understanding. Oh, I see Deputy City Manager Terry Banish.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Moreno. I'd like to speak to that on behalf of Recreation for the Youth Activity Scholarship. We, coming out of COVID, we're expecting to have more interest and requests for that scholarship dollar amount. That's why we requested the full $12,500. When we were in COVID, there was a whole lot of different things happening and we couldn't really make full use of it. These are for any youth activity, so art, dance, gymnastics, swim lessons, sports, all of that, and it doesn't have to be our program. So we definitely see that that's going to turn around as we are headed into 2022 with more opportunities. So I hope that answers your question in regards to that.
Could you also let us know the 2020 reallocation? Some of that we could see Santa Rosa accessibility, but I believe some of that we also ended up reallocating to ECHO, correct?
Yes, and I can speak on that, Mayor Moreno. So COVID obviously was unprecedented, anything in our lifetime, but since the recreation department was shut down and none of the youth activities were occurring, in 2020, there was a total of $11,565 allocated towards a youth activity scholarship. And in September of last year, knowing that this wasn't going to be used, the county had requested, that this needed to be spent on the public services piece, right? So it can't be spent on, the public facilities or whatever. So they had made a request to, reallocate those funds to ECHO. So there was $5,000 of that $11,565 that was reallocated in September to help out with ECHO and some of the unprecedented times we were having. And then another $6,288 in January, when we knew that these scholarships weren't going to be used, were also sent over, to ECHO, as the county's request, just knowing that those weren't going to be used. There was a big need last year during these times to really help people out and make that happen. Not sure we should have possibly come back to council on that. I know with the city manager, we spoke with her about this and, kind of got that over to ECHO to help them out.
I think we all appreciate when things can be done expeditiously. Be brought direct to council, and we all support ECHO quite heavily, but particularly with CDBG. So I don't think any of us would have an issue with that. Can you speak to what the 2021 funds look like that have already been that we set aside last year to the use of those funds? And maybe that would be Ms. Banish, or if you have that, Director.
Yeah, I think perhaps Deputy Director Banish can speak on that behalf. I'm not sure what the status of those are for last year, Terry.
Yeah, for 2021. I think as we're looking at 2022, that's some of the information we would want to know. Are we kind of back up and going and using those funds again?
Right. So for 2021, I know that we start since June. Of course, we've been back in progress again, but what we find is that January through February is what our biggest application time frame is. So as we go into 2022 from 2021, I think we're going to have that. I don't have what we would have had. It's September through October would be youth basketball. So that would have been what we're coming off of for 2021. So that would be what we would have, what that would look like if I had the actual dollars in front of me.
And 2021 for CDBG flows into our fiscal year 21-22. So basically those 21 allocation gets used through June 30th of 2022 for youth scholarships for 2021.
Right. So that can be that can be confusing when we're looking at it like that. But yes, the largest times for us is January through February, April through June, and September through October that we're starting to see those applications come in and those funds being used. So that's how then it would hit into the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, there were $10,700 awarded to that program. And as Terry mentioned, we're about almost halfway through the fiscal year for using those funds.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to see, is there any other questions of staff before, if there's any applicants on the line, we bring them on that would be able to give us some information that we might need. So I see Councilmember Bourbeau followed by Councilmember Funk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeBar, on the Santa Rosa project, this has happened before where we take a couple years worth of CDBG funding before a project happens. That happened with the Traffic Way project that was completed this year. How many years can you accumulate as some of this CDBG money to do a project? There must be some deadline at which you have to use it. Is it 3 years? Is it, what's the number, or how long can you do that?
Yeah, it's I don't think there's any set number, but what the county doesn't like is when our unspent CDBG funds are not being spent down and it becomes too big of a balance. And actually last year with the Traffic Way sidewalk project, it took a while for the neighboring property to negotiate some things with that used car lot and muffler repair shop. And it worked out great at the end because we needed to get construction easements from them, temporary. And we also got a permanent easement for that site or the ramp landing. So that took a while to get that and convince that owner and the business, that this is a good thing. So we were kind of under scrutiny at that point, but we drew down our total funds. So they're kind of looking at it from a total funds, how much we have, and then what that existing balance is. But we're in good standing right now. So it's not necessarily kind of when they're awarded, it's just kind of like carrying over, big balance from year to year. But typically we try to get this spent within 5 years to answer. That's a long-winded answer to your questions. I apologize.
Okay, so the reason I ask is, and I'm glad you have this particular slide up, is that, if we allocated the 95,000 this year, in addition to what was allocated last year and the reallocations, et cetera, we would be getting close to your project cost, your estimated project cost. What I'm curious about, my question is, I'm assuming, if you could throw, if it's $250,000 project, you could throw $10,000 of general fund money to get it done, as opposed to waiting another year and then it would, and see the price go up another $30,000 or something, that it might be more expeditious if you're this close, to get it done, even if it takes a small contribution. I assume there's no problem with contributing general fund dollars to a CDBG project.
No, you can, there's multiple sources of funding you can put towards any of these projects. This is just one funding source that we've traditionally used for these sidewalk improvement projects. One of the issues on this one, the cost estimate went up. Everything's gone up.
Right.
And then two, that reallocation from traffic way, we thought that had really heavy funding on it, and we'd have more unspent balance, but it only came out to just under $25,000. So we thought we were going to be having a little bit more, but that project ran into some issues when we're excavating. And
That's fine. I just want to know if we could, how long you can accumulate, and if you can, mix and match to get something done in a given year as opposed to waiting another year. Because like I said, with construction being what it is right now, you could see the cost escalate considerably, and we cost ourselves more money by waiting. So that was my question. Mayor, I'll have a question for one of the applicants if they're online later.
Sure thing. Councilmember Funk, followed by Councilmember Daris.
And thank you, Councilmember Barbeau, for covering some of the things that I needed to know. I just following up on those comments, just want to make sure if the council chooses to grant the CDBG crest for the Santa Rosa project tonight, can you complete that project without having to go back to yet another year of CBDBD?
My answer would be yes. I really believe we can. We have a really good, solid cost estimate on it. It's probably a little conservative. And we've got design plans ready to bid out. So I believe we can.
Okay. And then in the application materials on that we reviewed, there's a mention that providing safe and accessible pedestrian access for low and moderate income residents and students will benefit these populations by providing an alternative to vehicular transportation, particularly during those high volume traffic times of school drop off and pickup. Now, with the school district not providing as much in the way of buses due to the pandemic, this has been, we are hearing about traffic issues in a variety of places around, particularly around our elementary schools. Will this have some noticeable impact on traffic flow for that particular school area?
I would probably say to the average person, they wouldn't notice any difference in traffic. What it does is it provides a safe passageway for school children that live on the other side of El Camino from the highway to be able to cross over. There's a sidewalk on the south side of the bridge on Santa Rosa, and then you have to cross back over. But so there's crosswalks right at both ramps, right? And then, so I think what it would do is it might encourage parents to let their kids walk to school more so than having to drive them, or let them walk home is probably more likely, because a lot of parents drop off and then sometimes the students walk home. So I think it would allow kids to be able to walk home and walk to school a lot safer. So it might reduce some traffic, but I don't think it would be any level of service change or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then in the description that you provided of the people's self-help housing request, you described that, I recall you're describing that as a project that involved low and moderate income supportive housing. I didn't dig back through, and the applicant may be able to clarify that too. But my recollection from our discussion of that's significant in our discussion of that project in the RENA numbers and how we're going to read our regional housing needs assessment citywide, is that project is specifically dedicated to very low income and low income individuals, and is a significant part of our meeting the RENA numbers for that category, rather than being one that focuses on moderate income. Am I correct in that understanding? Or do you want to wait and let the applicant, if they're on the line, address that?
I'd probably let the applicant, or even Director Dunsmore knows a lot about the RENA numbers too, but
And Ken is on the line, so we'll bring him on
Yeah.
when we open up for public comment, and he can answer those kind of questions.
Right, but my assessment on it is it would, help towards those numbers that we have, but I'll let the applicant.
Yeah, but the focus was my concern, that we get
Yeah.
that we understand that project correctly. Okay, thank you, ma'am. I'm done with my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Daris.
Thank you. Nick, I just have one quick question on the Santa Rosa sidewalk. Does this project, or any of these projects for that matter, this one in particular, need to be fully funded for any of the work to be done? Because there is a section of that sidewalk, as you're well aware, is quite dangerous and probably not passable. I haven't traversed that area, but I can see it being a challenge. But can a section of it be done with the funds that's already allocated to at least get that portion of it fixed before the entire amount gets taken care of?
Yeah, I think it's probably, from an execution standpoint, it's probably, and from a cost saving standpoint, it's better to do it at one time, with the disruptions and everything else that would occur. So there's those inconvenience costs, as I call them, with construction, when people have to, wait, there's delays and, in traffic and everything else. It could be done, but when we put these types of projects out for bid, there's a lot, they're always way thicker bid documents, and there's just a lot more reporting and everything else. So from, staff savings, staff time and everything else, it's just better to do it all at one time. It could be done. I wouldn't recommend it on this one.
There's not a concern for liability issue, because it seems like it's more than just it seems dangerous, really, more than just.
And I think what you're talking about, Councilmember Duries, is that it's kind of like two panels that are kind of heaved up. And
yeah, it's buckled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I what we can do is I can have our maintenance staff go out there and see if we can address it, maybe by just sawing off an edge and laying those back down, or jackhammering them out and just putting a cold patch in there for the time being.
I'd be more comfortable with that. At least something, like I said, if the whole project can't get done, I think at least that needs to be fixed, at least so it's a little safer.
Yeah, I agree. We'll take a look at that and hopefully, get that addressed here quickly.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff, or shall we move to applicants? All right. I do want to let Jana Nichols and Catherine Manning know I did see your hands go up, and I'm assuming that is for community forum, and we will get to that after we complete this item. So you can feel free to leave your hand raised and I'll call on you then, or you can put it down and then raise it afterwards, either way. So let's see.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Funk.
I would assume that Jana Nichols, who's head of the 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, is probably here to address their application as part of this agenda item rather than the community forum item.
Thank you very much. Hers went up like instantly before we had even opened public comments. So I thought that was possibly all right. So thank you very much for that. So then it seems like we probably have Jana Nichols from 5 Cities. I know we have Wendy Lewis with ECHO is here. I see Ken from People Self-Help. And so I will just go with the first hands raised. I'll go to Ms. Nichols. Jana Nichols, you had your hand raised and then we lost you. There
I'm there. Am I here now? I'm sorry.
You're here.
I apologize. I appreciate your time tonight, and know that with regard certainly to the public services section, this is always a very difficult time in terms of discussion of how to allocate what are too few resources to some really good work. And I applaud the work of all of the partners that you're going to be hearing tonight. We are in partnership with each of them. I will say, just to be clear, while 5 Cities isn't our name, we provide the rapid rehousing and homeless prevention services for many of our partners throughout the county. And we do this county-wide. I think it's important that you also recognize, with regard to COVID, that we're not out of the woods yet. And in particular, homeless prevention funds after March will be very challenging. We use the CDBG funding specifically to address the needs for people that don't qualify for other funding. for example, for ESG. And we do that, as I say, countywide. Last year, you were kind enough to grant us an award. We are still awaiting that contract pending HUD's approval. So we have not yet put that into effect, but we intend to. This is a very modest request, and we're doing that. It is only 10% of your public services allocation. And while it may seem small, it does allow us to demonstrate that we have support throughout the jurisdictions in the county. That is very important to us. The other is there is a threshold of a CDBG allocation of at least $10,000. We already have that commitment from other communities, so that should not be a concern for you. With regard to the folks that we have been serving in Atascadero specifically, I want you to know that about 40% of those that we serve in our housing program are single parent households. And we use this funding for security deposit and rental assistance. And again, it serves a number of people that we can't qualify with other programs. To date in 2021, we have assisted 3 households in Atascadero with deposit assistance equaling more than $5,000. Currently, we're experiencing deposits of about 3,200, and we have assisted 288 households with regard to application to the California COVID relief program, rental relief for homeless prevention, and that program is still open. 55% of those in the Atascadero have applied are under 30% AMI, you're very low income folks. And we would continue to provide that assistance free of charge, regardless of your decision tonight. Separately from that, we have provided about $1,200 in immediate needs assistance to the citizens of Atascadero this year. So your decisions are difficult. We work with everyone that you're going to be hearing this evening. We do appreciate the consideration, and our countywide focus includes the city of Atascadero. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. If you could stay on, I wanted to see if there are any council members who have a question for you. I'm going to look to, I don't see Councilmember Warbo.
I did, and Jana, you mostly answered it regarding your services to residents in Atascadero. I thank you for that. It's disappointing to hear that the small amount of money we allocated a year ago still has not reached you. It sounds like that's what you said. But my other question from the more conservative side of the equation fiscally would be, in the last year, the state has allocated, it seems like hundreds of millions of dollars to Project Home Key and other homeless services related things. And I'm wondering if you are receiving some, additional money for them for these types of services.
We are, and thank you very much for the question. When I mentioned that we're not out of the woods, that is a very serious concern that I and I know many of our partners have. So we have a deadline of either June of 22 or September of 22 to expend COVID rental relief or COVID program funding that has been allocated either by HUD or the Department of Treasury. If I had one mention to you, it would be to advocate to your state and federal officials to extend that deadline, because COVID clearly has not concluded. That said, come September of 22, I have a tremendous fear of, as some of us have said, walking off the cliff, because we have expanded programs in many ways, but that funding will conclude as of now in September of 22. We are seeing, with regard, for example, to homeless prevention, a number of households who are unwilling to apply to the California COVID rental relief program because of the delay of payment, and they don't want to notify their landlord that they are having problems paying their rent. Because of the delay, they don't want the landlord to know that they might actually have problems paying the rent. So they are incurring significant what we call shadow debt in lieu of paying rent, and that will be a very difficult challenge. So we are anticipating not only from our services delivery system, but also from public need that come fall of next year, unless other funding sources are developed, that we're going to have significant problems.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Next up, Ken from People's Self-Help Housing.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor Moreno. And I just wanted to at least address Councilmember Funk's question about the RENA numbers. So currently we were proposing a 41 unit apartment project, and 40 of those units would serve low and very low income households. We'd attach or record a 55-year deed restriction. So all 40 of those units would count toward meeting your RENA goals. And I'm here for any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? I'm not seeing anything. Is there anything else that you would like us to know? Oh, I see. Well, I'm sorry, Councilmember Funk was normally you're quicker on the uptake.
I had to hit the mute button first.
There's that, yes.
I just wanted to note as I was looking to check a number, as I was looking with the project numbers, that this is given that the total project cost and the 40 plus units involved, it looked to me it was coming in at about $575,000 per unit, which is right about what you said to us in a different context was what it's going to be costing to put a new unit of permanent supportive housing up in our community. And I just wanted to check to make sure that I was in the right ballpark in that understanding.
Yeah, I think you've got the math about right. And so it kind of comes to a total of about, I think, $24 million or so. It's a huge amount. We're asking for 139,000 or so. So relatively small number, but the financing that you could provide this project has this real leveraging power, if you will. And so we've got a few other sources lined up that make us competitive to attract an award of tax credits from the state. And so that would enable us to bring about $18 million of private equity. It's usually banks that invest in these. So they become part of the, they're a limited partner. We're the general partner, still control everything. And so this is a great way to meet a really big number. Part of the reason why that's large is because also to compete for these tax credits, we have to do some sustainability features, some high energy efficiency features, things like that are above even higher than your local ordinance and building codes. So and there's a lot of other reasons, but anyway, that's kind of the explanation.
And if I may follow up on that, is this particular last piece of funding something that would contribute to the overall total, or is it something that is like the last piece to put you over the top?
It's impossible to predict for sure that it would be enough, because we never know for sure who else in the state is competing for these funds. So we're in a rural set aside. Atascadero is deemed rural for this competition, if you will. So we're competing with all the other rural jurisdictions that may have a project. But based on the past rounds and sort of how we usually score ourselves, we think that this amount will make it pretty competitive. So it'll mean that we'll probably apply in the spring of 2022, which is our first, our next opportunity to apply. There's just two times a year is all we can try for. It could and should be the last piece is what we're thinking. So again, we're not certain, but based on our experience, we think we have a pretty good chance of this putting us over the top, as you put it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chiguero, that brings up a question for me. I am curious then, if you did receive the funds and you applied and didn't receive the additional funding that you need, then and I don't know if this is a question for you or maybe Director DeBar, does that money then come back to be reallocated, or can it be held onto for a period of time? What is the CDBG rule for that?
I'll start, and your staff can give a response as well. We had anticipated and applied to use this for acquisition. We have financed the property as the corporation, but this would go to the project. The project would use it to acquire it. So that would be an immediate use, and that could be what happens here if the city were to choose that method. Or, if it was a commitment, we could keep that in abeyance, if you will. So that would be really a city decision, but we could make it work either way on our side.
Yeah, I think, much like the Santa Rosa project, we're already expending cost or expenses on those awards that we already got. You can't spend it before, July 1st or anything, or incur expenses, but you could use it towards, as the applicant mentioned, purchasing property, or those other, maybe doing design or things like that. So you can just start spending it towards a portion of it. Obviously, that's a huge project at $25 million. So, you certainly wouldn't have to wait till, the end of the project to claim that or use it.
Thank you. All right. Ken, thank you so much for your time and being here this evening.
Thank you.
And then we've got Wendy Lewis from Echo.
Good evening, everybody. I want to start by saying these are all very challenging opportunities because, again, many of our great partners are on the line and we're all in this normally together. So it feels awkward to be saying, oh, but we need it more than them. But it is reality in our case that this year that we have had a tremendous expansion. And I want to thank the council and the city staff for some of the reallocations in the past that have helped Echo Atascadero with the major rehabilitation project and the HEAP funding partnership. Echo is now, the building is a place we should all be proud of and offering the environment that we are very proud of to provide for our families and the people we're serving. Just want to kind of give some updates as well from our increases over the past year and why our application, we're hoping, remains whole. We've expanded operations tremendously, providing services not only in Atascadero, but Paso Robles as well, and taking on what was the winter shelter, our warming center in Atascadero, and have created an emergency winter shelter, serving there alone, providing over 2,250 nights of stay for the chronically unhoused in Atascadero. Last year, we had 18 of the program participants, very chronically unhoused, come into Echo Atascadero, and about half of them were housed. At Echo Atascadero alone, we see over 400 individual men, women, and children each night that utilize a variety of our services from a resident program, shower program, meal program, financial literacy, case management. Through that, this year we're on track in North County to help about 100 people be housed, even at reduced numbers because of COVID. If during non-COVID, we're able to serve twice as many people in our resident program. So those numbers would be quite different if we were post-COVID. Just want to make sure that our work continues and our expansion remains able to offer the incredible services we are currently doing, and some of our recent expansions that including street outreach and our partnership with the city's Our Team program. Our outreach case managers are meeting people out in the streets, not taking down the barrier of them physically getting to Atascadero. They're going out with Our Team twice a week and really collaboratively working together to serve not only people who are staying at Echo, but people out in the community that need those services as well. So again, I want to thank council, city staff for the years of support, and just grateful for our collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. As you said, it is a little bit challenging because here you are competing against people who, you're all serving, the same type of need. And the question I have for you, I know for 5 cities, they were, Ms. Nichols was mentioning that there are some individuals from Atascadero that they support. And I was noticing in the packet that ECHO indicates that it serves residents, as does 5 cities from all of the cities and county areas. Like, we're not specific to North County. Is that correct?
Correct. We serve anybody who needs our services, even though primarily I would say about 80% of folks we're serving are from North County. We don't limit that because there are cases when someone has no other option, someone facing domestic violence or in a situation that, you know, they're from Arroyo Grande and have nowhere to turn, and we have the right program for them. So our services are available for anybody who needs them.
Okay. And I think as I looked at the packet, you've requested from Atascadero, Paso Robles in the county only. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Are there other council questions for Wendy Lewis? I see Councilmember Bourbeau.
Yes, so thanks, Wendy, for that explanation. Along those lines, though, to follow up on what the mayor asked about, in the last year or two, have you received money CDBG wise from Paso and the county?
Yes. So from Paso, I apologize, I don't have those right up in front of me, but our total request between the county and Paso and Atascadero is about 62,000. It changes depending on what ends up actually coming to the county and through the system, but Atascadero's portion is usually about 10, 11,000. Paso's is about 12 to 13,000, and then the rest is from the county.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and actually this year the request was, I think it was 85 total, 59 from the county, and then 13, as I look in the packet, 13 from both Atascadero and Paso for this year is the request.
Right. I was just wondering, you know, if those requests had been granted in the past. Thank you.
They traditionally have been. The numbers just fluctuate year after year depending on what comes through the federal system.
Yeah. Councilmember Funk.
And the Homeless Services Oversight Council did recommend that ECHO receive 40,000 in CDBG funding from the county. Those recommendations are not final because they do have to be approved by the County Board of Supervisors, but that was HSOC's recommendation.
Thank you, Councilmember Funk. Any other questions for Wendy Lewis? All right. Thank you so much, Wendy. We appreciate you being here tonight. And with that, we do have public comment is still open for this item. And so Catherine Manning, I still see you there. We'll get to you as soon as we're done with this item. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item, CDBG funds? You can press *9 on the phone or raise your hand here in the webinar. And Catherine, I just want to make sure you're not wanting to speak on this item. I see the hand kind of going back and forth, and if I've misread that, then I certainly want you to come on now. All right, I think we then are going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council. So Nick, could you bring up the spreadsheet, the infamous spreadsheet? As all of you can tell who are watching this evening, we have this much money and we have this much need. And so it's a challenge every year to—
Thank you for calling the Atascadero City Council meeting. You may listen to the meeting while waiting.
Okay.
The voice will indicate when you're on.
Thank you. Now we know what that sounds like. So there's always more need than we have funding available. And so this part is always a little bit challenging for us because we would love to give everybody 100% of what they want, but of course that is not possible. So I'm just going to kind of go with my squares here down. So could we start with Councilmember Bourbeau? Please unmute yourself.
Good idea, thank you. I would like to give the 95,000 to the Santa Rosa project. And not only that, I would like to encourage staff to, when that money comes in, to proceed with the project, even if it requires a small amount of general fund money to do it, get it done. Like to see completed projects. And then as far as—
Real quick, Councilmember Bourbeau, there's 90,652 available.
Okay,
that's fine.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I see that here. 90. Yeah.
Actually, if I could pause you for a second, Councilmember Borbo, I'm getting a message that possibly, Catherine, are you with People Self-Help Housing and you're wishing to speak on this item? If that is the case, raise your hand and I will reopen public comment for you.
See that hand raised.
Got the hand raised, it's just getting off of mute. I think we just had some technical fun tonight. Catherine, you seem to be muted. Luke, are you able to maybe unmute her from where you are?
Yeah, I'm giving it a shot. I can only request her to unmute. So if she's not unmuting.
So Catherine, if you can hear us, there's a need on your end to unmute, or you could dial 805-538-2888 and get in on the phone line. All right. Let's do this. Let's go ahead. I'm going to close public comment again, bring it back. And Catherine, if you're able to call in, let Luke know, and Luke, go ahead and interrupt me if that's the case. Okay. So Councilmember Borbo, I will give it back to you again.
All right. Well, thank you. So yeah, the $90,652 to the Santa Rosa project, and then for the $20,920 available for the public services, I would like to give the $2,100 to 5 cities, and $10,000 for the youth activity scholarship, and the balance to ECHO.
Possibly, am I unmuted? This is Catherine Manning.
Yes, Catherine, you are now unmuted. So I will open up public comment again, reopen, and Catherine Manning, you've got the floor for 3 minutes.
I apologize. I did want to speak to the public service side of this. I am from People Self-Help Housing. I am a social worker, and I have been working on the property of Atascadero Gardens for several years. As you know, People Self-Help Housing is not only building affordable housing, as you heard our executive director Ken speak about, but we're also serving those that are actually living in some of our housing. The supportive housing program actually serves, the seniors, youth, homeless and formerly homeless that have lived in various places. And then as they come into our housing, the supportive housing team, which I'm a part of, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also bilingual. We work not only to keep them in housing, but also to support them in accessing some of the funds that you heard Jana Nichols talk about, 5 cities, the COVID-19 funding. We try to also help them, in their employment efforts, in their also to make sure that they're accessing the resources that are available in the community, not only COVID-19, but heat services for utilities. So we have been working on the Atascadero Gardens property. There's 18 units. And there is, I think it was 39 individuals living on in those apartments. And so I'm very familiar with the homeless issue. So this crosses the low income priority, very low and moderate income. It also addresses the emergency category, because without housing, as you know, people are living on the street. So our goal is not only to keep them into housing, but to help them advance in the resources, that are needed to make their lives successful. And so we are a link and a bridge to the resources that are in the community. You can have people that are living in apartment complexes throughout the county, but if they're not connecting to the Department of Social Services for, food stamps, or to NOR Clinic for some emergency medical needs, if they're uninsured, then they can easily not get the resources that are available in the community. So That's what we do. We serve those that are on our apartment complexes. There's a social worker assigned to that property, as would be a future project that you might approve in the future. Social workers assigned. We make contact with them, or if the apartment manager knows that they have needs, they contact us to reach out to them. Right before I got on this meeting, I got a phone call from someone that was having trouble with accessing the COVID-19 funds, and what they were wondering, what the status was. So thank you for the opportunity to share, and we appreciate consideration for funding for the public service side.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. And because I did open up public comment, I will ask if there's anyone else wishing to speak on this item. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council and pull up the spreadsheet again.
Mayor, I did have a question for her, since we hadn't heard from her previously.
Okay, Catherine, if you're able to come back on, we've got a question for you.
I just wonder, I don't need the address because I'll probably recognize it when you say it, but can you tell me what street the Atascadero Gardens is on?
Okay. Yes, I can do that. It is, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are, ma'am.
Okay, because somehow I get muted again. So I have trouble getting off the unmute. The property is on 7480 Santa Isabel.
Okay, that's right. I was thinking I knew you had a property on that street. All right, thank you. And these services that you are requesting the funding for would be provided to those particular residents?
Yes,
okay,
that's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Are there any other questions that council members had? All right, seeing none, we're officially closed with public comment, and go ahead, Council Member Bourbeau.
Well, I think I'm done. I'm not going to change what I said numbers wise.
I think the 8820 you wanted up in El Camino Homeless Organization, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Oh, did you say the Echo? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Echo.
Sorry.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And did you, Mayor, did you want to talk about these other two categories at this point or at the end?
I don't think we ever do anything besides the administration. So you're asking about the administrative reallocations?
Yes.
Okay. So unless anyone has a problem with the 20% administration that we know we need to do every year, let's just assume we're all good on that. And someone can state if otherwise, if they're not. With regards to the administrative reallocations, Councilmember Bourbeau, are you good with that?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
So I'm going down my squares here. Councilmember Darres.
There we go. Okay. Well, I looked at that sidewalk, so I have to agree that it needs to be fixed. So I'm going to go with the 90,652 as Charles Bourbeau did as well. Let's see. And considering that I think we're bouncing back with youth activities, I'd like to go with the full amount on that of the 12.5 for the youth activity scholarships. And I didn't do my math here completely. And then so I don't know if I have all the numbers correct, but 2,100 also for the 5 cities. So I do agree with that. And it looks like I'm pretty much almost matching what Charles did. I didn't realize that. And I guess the balance, yeah, then to El Camino, because then the balance after that would be for the admin portion, the 27,000 and change. So I think, yeah, I think so. I think that hit them all.
We have a little too much in the Echo number there.
Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, my number is going to be a little bit different because I went, so.
It would be 6320, Nick.
There you go.
Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, this is always hard because all of the applicants have such excellent and compelling cases for us, and I'd really like to see that People's Self-Help Project move forward. But I do think we need to get this Santa Rosa piece, which is imminent safety issue, dealt with first. So I will go with my colleagues in putting the 9652 there, and just register that if that People's Self-Help project is out again next year, I would be very inclined for us to look to support that and not necessarily try to have another public works project on the inside track. I'd like to see that one get completed also. On the public services side, I've got 1920 for 5 cities, 10,000 for the scholarships, and 9,000 for ECHO.
Mayor Pro Tem, and are you good with the reallocations?
Yes, I'm good with the reallocations.
Okay, thank you.
And the admin costs.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
I agree. I wish we had more money to allocate to all these great programs. I too think that the city of Atascadero project needs to be done. So I'm going to allocate the full 90,652 to that. City of Atascadero Youth Scholarships, allocation of 10,800 to that one. ECHO Homeless Shelter, 8,020. And then 5 Cities Coalition, 2,100.
And you're good with the reallocations?
Yes, thank you.
We do a little copy and paste here. You can just assume I'm good with the administrative reallocation, so don't worry about that in the administration. You can fill that in later. So I will, I agree with my colleagues on finishing up that project. And as Councilmember Bourbeau said, let's get that finished. Whatever it takes, we need to get that funding and get that project done. That would be nice to see happen. When it comes to public services, I want to make a little bit of a pitch here. I understand that we have people in Atascadero that are using the services of the 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, but equally we have people in South County using the services of ECHO. And so I think typically kind of how we've seen things happen is in North County, we're all kind of taking care of ECHO, and South County, or and county, and then South County is kind of taking care of 5 cities. And ECHO is looking for funding from Paso and Atascadero and the county. They're not going and asking for funding from all the cities. So they're not asking for Arroyo Grande or any of the other cities that are helping some Atascadero residents. So I would I'm a little bit concerned that we start spreading it just a little more and less is going to ECHO when they have expanded so much in this last year to serve particularly Atascadero, but the North County as a whole. And I know how badly they need those funds. I'm not saying 5 cities doesn't. I want to take care of our home first. So that's my pitch. So what I would like to do is, I do see the youth scholarships coming back. What I'd like to do is put, let's see, I'm gonna go 50-50 between ECHO and the youth. So that would be 10,460 for each of those. And so then what does that, can you go back up just so we can kind of see the consensus? What is that? Can you average that for us?
Sure. I know Director Rangel is super jealous right now, by the way.
She's not doing this?
No, I am.
Yeah.
So these are the averages, right? In this column.
All right. Okay, that is going to be it. Any last comments, or anybody wanted to make any sort of a change? All right, I guess we are looking good. What I would ask for then, I believe what you need, Nick, is a motion.
I do. Real quick, Mayor Moreno. So we're good on the admin costs, the reallocation.
Correct.
Administrative reallocations, you're good too?
Yes.
Okay. Then for the consensus on this, you want to go ahead with these averages?
That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we're providing staff this guidance to adopt all the administrative reallocations and these average numbers as our selections for the public services grants, if that's the right term.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bourbeau and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bourbeau?
Yes.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Dares?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom?
Yes.
Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, and I'm going to look to my council members. How are we doing before going on to the next? Does anybody need a break or do you want to go on ahead? Go on? All right, we're going to go. So now we're going on to, and keep in mind, we have closed session after this. So we want to move as expeditiously as we can while, of course, doing everything that we need to do. So on to item B2, urgency ordinance adopting interim standards for the implementation of Senate Bill 9. I will ask if we have any ex parte communication besides the email that we all received, any ex parte on this item. I am seeing none. We will turn this over to our Community Development Director, Mr. Phil Densmore.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Let's have a little chat about Senate Bill 9. I'm going to put up a presentation here, if I can get this started. All right, get that going. There it goes. All right, just making sure you can see my screen there with the Senate Bill 9 title.
Yes, but we're seeing your presenter mode.
Oh, then you're on the wrong side. Let's just get on the other side there. Let's get that in the right spot. Let's see. All right, are we there now?
Nope.
Other side. What?
No, we're not seeing anything right now. We're on no side.
Let's try that again. All right. Let's see. All right, we'll try this one more time. We'll put that into presentation mode. All right, are we still?
No, we're still seeing your presentation. So that we're seeing presenter mode. Just so you know.
All right, let's fix that up. Keeps doing the same thing to me. Apologize for that. We'll
That's
get
okay.
there.
I do a lot of presentations and that's happened to me as well. Like you're supposed to be able to put it into presentation mode and nobody else sees it, but it doesn't always.
Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that to me. It doesn't typically do that. Well, let's try it one more time. I'm going to end this show. Excuse me for just a second. All right, so you're looking at the regular mode, and I should be able to put it into presentation mode, but now it flips over to the wrong screen, doesn't it?
It does. Go to that little, do that again, Phil.
Mm-hmm. Let's try this one. I keep trying a different one. Okay.
Okay, so it's still there. Go to the little circle with the 3 dots in it down below.
Mm-hmm.
Right there and see if that hide presenter view. Oh, and then it hides the whole thing. Well, it's not the end of the world unless you've got notes in there and it starts getting jumbled. We can.
I don't have anything, so we might, you know what? Just. Oh wait, let's try this one.
Perfect. There you go.
Oh my gosh! I apologize for that delay. All right, let's move this quickly. Like you said, you like to keep moving along here. Anyway, Senate Bill 9 was introduced this September, just a couple of months ago, September 16th. It was signed into law. It actually goes into effect January 1st of next year, so it's coming up quick. We've got about 2 weeks And that's really the reason for an urgency ordinance. Just to give you some background, this Senate bill has 3 primary goals. It was really a design to allow the development for an additional dwelling unit on parcels that are zoned single family within specifically urbanized areas of the city. It also allows this new, what they call urban lot split, that cities need to approve, what we call ministerially with no hearing, no discretion, no conditions on appropriate parcels, which would allow 2 units on each of those new resulting lots. So in some circumstances, this means that now your typical single family lot that had 1 house on it could turn into a site with potentially up to 4 units, given that each of the lots can contain up to 2 units in the end. The third and probably least significant thing about Senate Bill 9, it does allow cities to grant a 2-year time extension to a tentative parcel map, which is a subdivision map, rather than our current 1-year standard that we have today. This little graphic you see on your screen, you probably can't read it too well, but this is really the advertisement that the group trying to pass SB 9 put together. And it kind of shows you the intent of putting homes basically in people's backyards, to invest and create housing in people's own communities, to give people additional equity, to provide these smaller and more affordable homes within a neighborhood that are intended to meet the compatibility and design standards of the community, and to protect rental housing, protect fire hazard zones and other environmentally sensitive areas. And this was all done as part of a bigger legislative package by California right after they did the accessory dwelling unit laws. And then there was SB 10 that provides some additional incentives for providing affordable housing. But what I will tell you is this is probably one of the more substantial changes to state law that has impacted local land use law in the last 20 years since I've been working with land use law. So it's really an interesting one. It really tends to, I'll just use the word, encroach on local law from a state level. So where does it apply? What they did do, they used the US Census Bureau urbanized area designation. So in our city, it's about half of the west side and all of the east side of 101 of Atascadero is in that urbanized area. It kind of follows somewhat the area that we serve by sewer anyway, but still includes a lot of areas that aren't served by sewer as well. And it does avoid the upper west side, kind of our steeper slopes. It's areas that they found had a higher density. And an important factor, it only applies to areas that are actually zoned single family. So that means any area that's zoned anything else, commercial, whether it's zoned public or open space or parkland or even multifamily, off the table. It's only those single family zones. So why rush to do an urgency ordinance? Well, the state just passed this law and it goes into effect really quickly. I would have hoped that they would have given us a year to get ready for it, but we don't have time to really put together a well thought out ordinance and procedure for this very substantial change to what can develop on property. So instead, we quickly put together an urgency ordinance, knowing that we can pass an urgency ordinance in time for the state law to be implemented on January 1, while working on a more permanent long-term ordinance. So what we're looking at tonight, we're not going to live with forever. It's only going to last 6 months. And during that time, we're going to come back to you with a permanent ordinance that addresses Senate Bill 9, and at the same time, a permanent ordinance that addresses accessory dwelling units. So we're going to do that. But right now, we just need a placeholder, and we need to really implement what the state law has done. Otherwise, the state law is going to take precedent and we'll have no local control. And basically, Senate Bill 9 does allow us to establish criterion that deny applications based on health and safety issues or impacts to the environment, and apply our own objective design standards. We can't add conditions to these projects. We can't say, hey, because you're here, you need to do this. But instead, if we have a pre-approved set of what we'll call objective standards, we can implement those. So in reviewing our city, we do have a lot of different issues in our city that are probably very different for what this particular Senate bill was designed for. It appears this Senate bill was really intended to be for an area like San Jose or San Francisco, Los Angeles, where you've got a ton of small lots and you've got a lot of services and you have a lot of high density already. In a community that's rural like Atascadero, where we don't have a lot of property served by sewer, we don't have a lot of good road access, secondary access, we call it, with two ways in and out. We have a lot of slope. We have a lot of creeks and wetlands and sensitive habitats. We have archaeological resources, and we have properties that are potentially historic resources. All of those things are brought up in SB 9 that should be protected from being destroyed by much higher density and much higher development. So these are areas of concern that we addressed when we started thinking about Senate Bill 9 and when we started to create some design standards and some mapping. So initially, our analysis reveals there's just over 3,000 potentially eligible locations. I say locations by meaning lots that are in the city, that are zoned single family, that are served by sewer, that are within the urbanized area, that potentially could utilize one of the two SB 9 procedures, whether that's the lot split or adding a unit on their property. So we mapped these out initially. It's no guarantee that any of the properties on this map could actually use SB 9. They're still going to take an individual analysis to make sure that they're not sloped over 30%, that we don't have the resource issues, that we have two ways in and out on a road to get to and fire, and the rest of the criteria. So first of all, it's really good to clarify the two definitions because there's two different sections to this urgency ordinance that are really critical to understand, and they're different. A lot of them have the same standards though. And there's urban lot split, which is basically a new lot split created under SB 9. And that's on a parcel that somebody already owns and lives on. And we'll clarify that a little bit because I know there was some confusion about the language on that. But the intent of the law is that this is done by property owners on properties that they occupy. And the reason that caveat was put in there is to avoid a developer coming in and saying, I'm going to buy those 5 parcels. I have these 3 parcels. I'm going to do this over here and that over here. And all of a sudden, it's a lot of investment. The intent isn't that. The intent is for property owners, that properties they live on, they can create this investment. They can create this extra unit or extra 2 units. So it's really important to understand that with an urban lot split. And also that Senate Bill 9 requires that they sign an affidavit saying that they're going to reside on that property for 3 additional years after the approval of this particular lot split. Now, there's the second part of this, which is the urban dwelling unit. Now, an urban dwelling unit could be put on a lot that isn't subdivided by the urban lot split, or it could be put on a new lot created by the urban lot split. But an urban dwelling unit is simply a new unit that's created under SB 9 on an existing site with a primary unit or on a new parcel created under SB 9. The idea is that up to 2 units in total are allowed per lot. Now, we know in some cases, people are thinking about accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. Those are a different thing. And the intent of SB 9 is not to combine those 2 laws and not to duplicate those things, but to say, hey, you're going to use SB 9 or you're going to use the accessory dwelling unit law. Which one would you like to go with? And each one has its own caveats and standards, so they're different. Now, the important thing about urban lot splits, if we talk about those in detail, they do require this 3-year on-site owner occupancy following the split. So the assumption there is they mean by the state laws that these things cannot occur on a vacant lot because a vacant lot can't be owner occupied. So the assumption here is that what they intended is that somebody owns and lives on a site and they're going to create this lot, this new lot, so that these 2 additional units can go on that new lot. The lot has to be split roughly in half. They do allow 60-40. But generally it's a half. So you can't cut off a corner that you don't want. It's got to be a half. In a lot of cases, that's not going to work if your house is smack dab in the middle and you've got to have a certain amount of frontage and certain amount of access to it. So not every lot's going to be eligible for that. The other caveat is that you could not do a junior ADU or an ADU on your existing lot or your new lot once you accomplish your SB9 split. So that you'd have to do just SB9 units if you're going to subdivide under an SB9 scenario. Additionally, what the law is very clear about is that there's no subsequent lot splits. In other words, once you go through an SB9 split, which we would assume is a lot created that's far smaller than what the city would normally allow, that you can't again come back and split that later. So we would need to record a covenant to say, hey, this lot's been the subject of an SB9 split. That's it, it's done. It can have its 2 units on it. End of story. The other thing that's really specific in state law, which is also the same as accessory dwelling unit law, is they don't want these lots and these new units to be used for short-term vacation rentals, Airbnbs. The intent is to provide more long-term owner-occupied or renter-occupied long-term housing. And one of the local things that we have added to this is it must be in a lot that's served by sewer. And then, of course, the state already said it has to be within the urbanized zone. And the sewer caveat's a big deal because recently we have been getting a lot more information and doing a lot more analysis on lots and lot sizes that are needed to support on-site wastewater disposal systems. We'll talk about that more later when we get into the accessory dwelling units in a few months, but essentially about an acre of property is needed for 2 units. So if we get into the sewer issue with SB9, it creates a lot of complexity. So right now we're drawing a line to say if it's served by sewer, then it's an eligible lot if it's in the urbanized area and it's single family. On to the urban dwelling units, the separate topic a little bit. Let's talk about a few details about that as well. 2 allowed per lot, or in that case, if you have a primary unit, that just means you can do 1 SB9 unit. You can't displace affordable housing or affordable rentals if you're going to build that unit or modify your site for that. Again, can't create a short-term rental out of a SB9 urban dwelling unit. Site will need to be served by sewer and within that urban zone. And then the city is allowed to establish a set of what we'll call objective standards. There's also objective design standards, which I'll talk about next. But the objective standards that are being proposed for Atascadero meet some of the standards that are allowed by the state, which is an 800 square foot maximum size. And I'll elaborate on that size limit as well. The reason for that size limit is because, again, there is potential for one existing single family site to contain 4 units. There's no limit on the existing primary unit. So let's say that you have a 1/4 acre site or a 10,000 square foot site for that matter that has a large 3,000 square foot unit on it. If you create this new lot and you can put 2 more units on that, each of those would be 800 square feet, and then an additional 800 square foot unit on your existing site. So altogether, you're talking, about several thousand square feet of structures on a pretty small site. Given setbacks are reduced for these new units down to 4 feet, given the attempt to continue neighborhood compatibility, keeping the size limits down is critical. It also meets the intent of the state, which is to maintain a semi-affordable by design housing stock and to create these units that are integrated in these neighborhoods. Thereby, there's the 800 square foot maximum size that's being proposed. Now, the city could go larger, can't go smaller than that. The state says you need to allow at least an 800 square foot unit. We are proposing 1 off-street parking space be provided. We are also including in these objective design standards that sites that do have significant creeks, jurisdictional waters, significant archaeological sites, which we have mapped here at the city, or other sensitive habitats, not be qualified for this. For example, if the entire site's in a wetland or drainage, might not be a good idea to quadruple the density. The other caveat that's in there is that it does allow cities to prohibit these on sites that contain a qualifying historic structure. Now, our general plan does call out our colony homes as historic structures. However, they have not been officially listed at the state level or even locally on the register. It does mention that these properties would have to be listed in order to qualify for that. So that's a significant discussion we'll need to have if we want to protect colony home properties from these particular SB9 subdivisions and SB9 developments. We would need to move forward and talk to the community and determine whether we want to add those properties as historic to our local list, which has been recommended by our general plan for many years. It just hasn't fallen into a level where we've had the time and priority to do that activity. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, properties without secondary road access. What does that mean? There's a number of areas in the city that only have one way out, and there's a large number of homes on a long distance on a dead end road. That creates a significant fire hazard issue when you have a wildfire. We don't want to increase the density in those particular areas. Now, under SB9, you can't limit development in a fire severity zone, such as a wild and urban interface or a very high fire hazard zone, as long as the structure that's being built complies with the current fire and building code standards, which they all do if they're going to get a permit, because they come through us and they get evaluated for that. So that's not a way to restrict SB9 units, but secondary road access is. So that's something to certainly consider. And then one of the design options that is being suggested is consolidation of driveways, so that we don't have 4 driveways on a small property that they're sharing the driveway, which branches off into the units. The other portion of this that's being suggested is what we call objective design standards, which are really similar to the property development standards that are already required with plan developments. And these are done to increase neighborhood compatibility, to increase the attractiveness, neighborhood cohesiveness, reduce overlook. Some of the ideas that are in the interim code here in the urgency ordinance are covered front porches, however small those might be, open space requirements, which really just means yards, being able to get outside on a small deck, on a small patio, on a small garden. So we have some space requirements for that. Reduce footprint of the second floor to increase the building articulation and really reduce the overlook. Now, the state says that these units can have a setback as little as 4 feet. If you have a 2-story building, right at 4 feet, you're looking right down into somebody's backyard or into their property, and you might be shading their property. However, if you set back that second floor, that really helps to reduce those issues. A lot of communities, instead, what they're doing is they're mandating that these units simply be 1 story. That's also an option. That just goes a little further in terms of restriction. Dedicated laundry and storage, it's just a simple item that we have in a lot of our multifamily standards as well. And then maximum lot coverage standards, which means maximum amount of area on a lot. For example, if you said, okay, I'm going to have a 2,000 square foot lot and you can only have 50% coverage, that means you can have a structure that's only 1,000 square foot when it includes the garage and the patios and the whole thing. So these are some objective design standards that are being proposed. There's a few more details in your report. So the next steps, this is really a step 1, and this helps us kind of enter a discussion and talk about some of these details. What we have before you is not perfect. I will tell you that. It's been put together hastily, knowing that we have a January 1 deadline and knowing that we need to work on a permanent ordinance. But we have worked with our city attorney. We do believe what we do have is legal and in compliance with Senate Bill 9. But that we know that we need to refine it down a little better for Atascadero and kind of watch and learn as other communities develop their ordinances as well and look to see what legal interpretations come out on this. So for tonight, we are looking for your direction on standards to be included in a permanent ordinance. We'd like to look at affordability, height limitations, other design standards. And we know that there's some clarifications and adjustments to this ordinance based on the questions that we've seen. And in fact, we have already proposed some corrections to the existing urgency ordinance. We can talk about these. There's some things that clarify some of the issues about how many units on each lot. What do you do with a vacant lot? We can talk about that in detail after we get through the discussion. And it's also about an existing owner, what does that mean? Just defining some of these things, because it is confusing the way some of this is written. So as alternatives, we can make modifications to the proposed interim ordinance, or I'll call it urgency ordinance. We don't have to adopt this, although it's a really good idea because it gives us some local control. If we did that, any denial or construction of a subdivision application or any of these things would be pursuant to the state law sections included in SB 9 and on a case-by-case basis. So what this does, it helps give staff and the public some guidance if we go with this interim ordinance. But I'd like to stop here. I know there's questions, and we can start that discussion and we can go from there. Thank you.
So Director, what we're understanding from what you said is that we're making this as restrictive as we think it needs to be to start out, because it's hard to put an ordinance out there and then realize after you've really had the time to delve into it that, oops, that doesn't work for this reason, which we didn't understand. And then trying to bring that back is a little more challenging once you've already, sort of put that entitlement out there.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So we're kind of trying to do the best we can with a very tight timeline that the state has given us. I have one quick question before I go to council, and that is that what I heard you say was that you also wanted feedback on the permanent ordinance, and I didn't have that in. That's not what I saw as the recommendation, that we were just approving the urgency ordinance. I wasn't getting that we were going to be giving feedback on standards.
Did I throw out a new wrinkle? I'm sorry. You don't have to give feedback, but it's not.
I want to have clarification so that we're doing. I don't want us to go all over the board. I want us to focus in. But if there's something you need, then
main point is to get an urgency ordinance adopted. But I think through that process, automatically, we're going to be able to glean feedback on a permanent ordinance, but let's not go too far off in that direction, I suppose. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So looking to council for questions. Councilmember Darras, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
All right, thank you. And actually, Phil, I had several questions that I wanted to ask, and I thought, well, maybe it's premature because we just wanted to pass this, but I might hit some of those questions anyway. For future reference for the final version that we want to go for down the road. On a lot split, okay, I've got questions all over the place here, and hopefully I won't bounce around too much, but if somebody was to do a lot split under this urgency ordinance, not emergency, can they do it without any plans to build anything? In other words, they're just putting this forward in order to say, I'm going to split my lot now and do something down the road, whether it's next year or 10 years. Is that something that's possible, or
yes,
do they have to? Okay, yes. So they don't have to show plans that they're ready to build something.
They just have to show us a line.
Show you a line. Okay.
On a map that's been engineered.
Okay. One of the concerns I have with the language that's in here, let's see if I understand my own question here. I feel it's inconsistent with the way we do other other dwellings, other units, I'm sorry. If, and I know the SB units are different than a dwelling or an ADU and junior ADU, so I'm not mixing those together, but an ADU, the maximum that we can do is 1,200 square feet, but that does not include the garage or a covered porch or any of that other stuff. And the way the language that's in here includes all of that. So so your 800 square feet includes the garage, includes a covered porch. By the time it comes down, you got a little tiny unit. I know that's the temporary thing, and we're trying to, we're going to move forward from that. But there's an inconsistency there, and I'm wondering if that could potentially cause a problem with somebody proposing to build something.
It's actually easier to build an ADU than it is one of these for several reasons, and that's one of the reasons as well. But also, let's keep in mind, they're not required to do a storage room or a garage on these units at all. They don't have to do that. But if they do want to do that, if they want to do an attached structure to one of these SB 9 units, it should be included in that square footage, because what happens over time is these integral attached garages and structures end up becoming part of the unit, and they get converted over time. So if they want to do a garage and they want to do a detached garage or a detached storage room that is non-habitable, that wouldn't count towards their square footage. What we're saying is if it's attached and integral to this unit, that's the size that you get, because that's the footprint that is appropriate given the fact of the number of units on this particular property.
Okay,
so that's the difference. But yeah, you could do an accessory dwelling unit on it if you had a very large lot. I think our latest revision to the ADU standards were based on lot size and size of the primary structure that we're going to come back with. But yeah, the maximum would be 1,200 square feet. And I don't believe we did include attached garages and things like that at that point. So it is different. You're right. ADUs are different than SB9 units.
Right. No, I understand that. So an SB9 unit, if somebody was to do, well, in this case, under this urgency ordinance, it's 800 square feet. I mean, you could go less, obviously, but 800 is the maximum. You don't have to have an attached, you can do a detached garage, you're saying, and that detached garage will be a maximum of 280 square feet per the ordinance that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that actually clears that one up. Let's see. Okay, so if somebody was going to split, this, say, February coming up here right after we pass this thing, they would not necessarily, or they wouldn't be locked into these items that's on here because this ordinance is going to change, right?
It may change a little bit, but regardless of whether we adopt this urgency ordinance or not, people can come into the city and apply for an urban lot split or an urban dwelling on January 1.
Right, and then when we finalize this ordinance and it's no longer the urgency one, the language is going to change, the conditions will change. They're not locked into what they split it under. It's whatever it is current at that time, right? I mean, like if we change the maximum. Right now we have a maximum of 800 square feet, and if we change that to be a little bit larger, they're not going to be locked into 800.
No. If we change the policy, if we change the ordinance before they build it, before they get approval of their permits, they can comply with whatever standards we have in place at the time that they submit for their construction permit.
Okay. Another question on if somebody was to split their lot now and they didn't build, so now they've got two lots and they were to sell it off. So now somebody owns that other portion of what used to be the one property. Can this new buyer come in and build a regular primary residence? If it's a big lot, if it's still an acre. So somebody else can't come in and build a 2,000 square foot house.
No, so it's different. So this one, if they do an SB9 lot split, that new lot is going to be deed restricted to be SB9 units only. So whatever we decide the size of those units are going to be, that's what they get. The intent really isn't to create these new lots that have big houses all over. The intent is to, like I mentioned earlier, for someone to have, subdivide off their accessory unit to have it separately owned, but for those units to be these urban dwelling units. So the idea isn't to just create infill larger subdivisions, which would be really problematic. So they would be a deed restricted lot. So someone buying an SB9 site, they'd be locked into whatever SB9 urban dwelling unit standards our local jurisdiction adopts.
Okay, that clears up a big thing for me, because I was wondering how that was going to work out. So that'd be something that in the deed that they would know that they're buying something that is restricted on that. So then the last thing here in the SB9 language, as it's per the state, they do specify that cities can't. They have to allow at least an 800 square foot unit. We already talked about that, but it doesn't discuss a maximum size. It doesn't say that the state is not concerned about how big you can build it. So with us putting something like that in there, that's not going to be a conflict or anything, because we're gonna. I mean, you have it in here as a maximum already, which happens to be their minimum. So we're on one size. But it sounds like what you're saying is, they're going to say you can't say anything less than 800, but we can set a maximum, and that's not going to be an issue with the state.
That's correct. We can go bigger.
And we can go bigger, and we can set that wherever it's at. Okay. So
A lot of other cities are currently sticking with the 800 because already, like I mentioned, there's 4 units on a site where we predicted 1 with our general plan. It's a lot of development.
Right. Okay. So they're keeping it 800. And now, you mentioned that another way to do it is a total lot coverage. I'm sorry. Is that in this urgency ordinance? I don't recall if I saw.
Yes, we do have total lot coverage. I think, but we put 40% in there, and I have to take a look.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to look it up because I just didn't recall seeing that. So, all right. Well, that pretty much answers my questions on that one at this point. I might have more coming up, but that certainly helps.
All right.
Thank you, Phil.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
I'm trying to understand the urban lot splits a little bit more. What if a property owner has a primary home and ADU on one side, and then they still have additional land to do the lot split? Is that even an option for them?
Yes, it is. So then they would have their 2 units on their one property, and then the new lot would be eligible for 2 SB9 units.
Okay, but you said originally that on the lot split that they couldn't have an existing ADU, or they just couldn't build a new
They couldn't combine and build more ADUs and urban dwelling units together, but they can split off what they already have. So if they have a primary unit, an ADU, and then they have enough property left over to create this 50-50 lot split, they can do that. And then the new lot gets 2 urban dwelling units. The existing lot gets to stay as it is because it already has 2 units.
Okay. Does both lots considered SB9 lots?
At that point, yes. So they'd both be locked in, but the existing one has existing houses on it. So they're just going to stick with what they are. They don't have to, they're not going to change. So they don't have to comply with the new standards. Just the new development has to comply with the new standards.
Okay, I got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Councilmember Funk.
Thank you. Several questions. For these definitions, for sensitive habitat and various jurisdictional waters and whatever, if somebody wants to know whether or not these kinds of restrictions affect their property, do they just call up the city, or where do they find out?
We would suggest that they contact the city. We're going to have a number of brochures and information out there, but we can't cover all bases at the same time. And there's so many unique situations in the city that we want to encourage folks to reach out to us so we can do the research on their property and determine all of the resource criteria. We have a team that can do that and get back to them pretty quickly to find out what's going on there. Whether we have to go out to the site or use our GIS mapping to make a determination, or both.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm still, from a big picture perspective, I'm a little troubled, as Councilmember Darris was, with this 800-foot limit, where when we're looking on the ADU side of things, and the DRC committee will be reviewing the new stock plans that you've developed with Atascadero as the lead agency for multiple cities, to have stock plans for ADUs so people can build those. And those units go up to a little under 1,100 square feet. There are 2 different plans for ADUs that we're looking at stock plan sizes that would be larger than the 800-foot limit that we are setting for urban dwelling units. So as we look at this ordinance over time and work to finalize something, I'd like to see us be attentive to whether we need to be quite so restrictive in all settings as 800, and whether we might be able to allow, at least for the pre-approved plans, to move forward on these units that are created by the lot splits, as well, on the SB9 process, as well as units that are done by ADUs.
Mm-hmm.
For now, I think I understand that there's some reservation about that we just don't know what we might be getting into with some of that And the stock plans aren't going to be available in the next few months yet anyway, right?
That's correct. Yeah. I think our largest stock plan is going to be 1,000 square foot. Most of the other cities wanted much smaller ones. I think Atascadero is kind of the outlier because we have larger sites. And so we wanted a larger unit. So we settled with 1,000 square foot. Most of the unit designs are actually smaller and smaller than 800. But certainly we can go explore different options based on property size. We can explore different options based on the primary unit. We can explore different options for different areas. And as we learn more about this, I think that the council or the community might become more comfortable with refining that a little further. I think we're starting off, I think, as we mentioned, wanting to be reining this in as much as possible until we know more.
Sure. Another question with regard to the reduced footprint of the second floor. How much does that aspect add to the cost of a unit? Is that a big deal or not a very big deal?
We don't have any science on that being a significant cost. What we do know that it does, it substantially enhances design. It gives opportunity for an outdoor patio or deck. It also reduces the appearance of that property shadowing another property. And a lot of communities are actually going with single story altogether, not even allowing a second story. But it is definitely one of those standards that it seems to be commonly utilized in a lot of communities.
Okay, so we don't really know what
And
the
it
cost.
actually comes out of one of our plan development standards that we already have. We don't know the actual cost of that. There is probably some additional cost with the engineering and architecture with walls that don't line up with each other when you've got a bearing wall and you've got another bearing wall that's set back from it. But I don't have those figures for you tonight.
Okay. That's something that we could explore then for a little those impacts for the more permanent ordinance. One of the on page 65 in the packet in Exhibit A, item 7, there's a specification that any proposed urban dwelling unit must be connected to a separate water service. So it's separately metered. We understand from a constituent who's reported that that's a $24,000 cost that doesn't go to the city, it's the water companies. And water service would be obviously volumetric. If there's a meter there, it's going to be volume. So the pros corrections do include getting rid of that requirement altogether?
That was an error. Yes, that was put in there in our original text. We meant to take that out. The intent there is to have separate meters to separate ownership when there's a separate lot, but not to each unit. There is a significant additional cost. So units on the same lot can share a water service, not when they're on separate lots.
That makes sense. If you want to be able to sell the lot to somebody, then it ought to have its own utilities.
Yeah.
That's a more reasonable impact. Okay. And then in the priorities on page 66, let me make sure that I understand in the election of development standards that the requirement by state law is that if the site's eligible and they want to split it and they meet the 60/40 or whatever, the split size requirements, that if at that point the criteria that we've established do not accommodate 2 800 square foot units and the owner wants to put them on there, that the requirements have to be waived one by one until you get to where you can accommodate those units. Am I understanding that?
Yes.
And that's state
right.
law. Okay. In the sequence of that, it seems to me that the easiest one to adjust might be that second floor limitation as opposed to the lot size one. would you have an objection to reordering that, to putting that first?
That's entirely up to your colleagues.
Yeah, okay.
So I think staff used some discretion in ordering that. But yeah, I think it's completely up to the council which way you'd like to prioritize that. I think each one has implications potentially.
Yeah, okay. And then the other thing on page 64, and I don't see that on your list here of amendments. Is 64 item E1. Okay. Then in the subs, in that you've taken out the word urban or proposing taking out the word urban and remove dwelling units. Could we insert in the per? My concern is the language of per lot always leaves me going, are we talking about the lots before or the lots after? And my understanding is that this would have applied to the resulting lot. So if that's the case, could we be specific to that and insert the word resulting between per lot so that this is clear?
Yes, I think there's two different sections, and I think on page 64, we're actually talking about the urban dwelling unit within one lot. And then the next section under urban lot splits, we have a very similar criteria on page 67, which is a little different. The intent certainly is parent lot and then created lot. So we could change the language to be, I think on page 67 is what you're talking about. Is that right? Under urban lot split?
Yeah, I was reading this in the context of the urban lot split.
Yes.
Where you
so that
no
would be
more than
page 67 for E1. No more than 2 dwelling units may be developed per lot. So what's the confusion still there? Is it still about talking about the parent lot and the
right? The issue is I would suggest inserting the word resulting so that it's clear that we're talking about after the split. It's 2 lots, and each one can have no more than 2 units on it.
I wonder, Councilmember Funk, what I heard the director say is a parent and a created lot. So possibly the language to use that might make things more clear would be, director, if you go through and you find those areas, and maybe Councilmember Funk can point those out to you, rather than per lot, we can say per created lot or per parent lot, where it might be applicable, so that it clarifies for anyone reading this.
I'm fine with that nomenclature. I just want us to use some kind of a modifier so that we know if we're talking about before or after a split.
Director, is that clear? Like if you look at what you have on the screen on page 67, no more than 2 dwelling units may be developed per lot.
It is clear. And I guess one of the ways to say that is no more than 2 dwelling units may be allowed per lot, whether the parent lot or the created new lot.
Well, I thought this was really, we're talking about the created lot. If the parent lot's the initial one, the parent.
But the parent lot's also going to be restricted to 2 units under SB9. If you create an SB9 lot split, it also becomes encompassed in the SB9. So that's why the intent of this, no more than 2 dwelling units may be developed per lot, regardless of whether it's the parent or the created lot. That applies. That's what we're trying to say here. So
that's kind of why I like the language resulting, because it's after you've done the split, you have resulting lots, and each one can only have two units. Or if you don't split anything, then your resulting, think of this effort as still 1 lot, and it can only have 2 units.
So let's just go with like maybe having some clarity around that. Director, you're hearing, I think, the feedback of what Councilmember Funk is saying, just so that this is clear for anyone who reads this, is saying, well, is it the initial lot or is it the two created lots? So let's think of a way to make that clear.
Yeah.
And we can move on from there. Does that help, Councilmember Funk?
Yes, I'm fine with that. We
I'll think of
probably,
that.
yeah, well, while we're doing public comment on this, we'll probably need to come up with specific language, because I'm guessing, because this is an urgency ordinance, that we need to be precise about the language so that we can make that as an amendment in the
correct
in the language of the motion that we need to adopt tonight. Okay, thanks. That'll do me.
Okay. I want to bring something up. We've been having a conversation and we had received input from a member of the public who was concerned that we were saying, in our urgency ordinance, a maximum of 800 square feet, but with ADUs, in some cases we can have a maximum of 1,200. What I want to remind everybody tonight is that with an ADU, you're talking a primary residence and one ADU of up to 1,200 square feet. That's it. With this SB 9 ordinance, you're talking about 3 more potential units. So not just a 1,200 square foot ADU, but in this urgency ordinance, potentially 3 800 square foot. So double what you would have with the one ADU. So if you say now we're going to do a maximum of 1,200, you're talking an additional 3,600 square feet of a footprint versus just 1,200 on, this one lot. So hopefully that's clear. We need to remember that in doing this, we've got to, figure out, are there larger lots where it makes sense, where these urban dwelling units could be larger? And I know that that's what staff will be looking at. But in the beginning, I think we do need to be that restrictive, because when we consider neighborhood compatibility and other things, that is a big concern. And we're talking a big increase in footprint. Other questions? Councilmember Bourbeau, followed by Councilmember Darris.
Thank you, Mayor. And some of my questions were answered by others' questions, although a couple I'm not sure I fully understood and want to make sure I do. In regards to particularly the interesting point that Councilmember Funk raised on page 66 about the election of development standards and the things that would be set aside. So that is to say that because what the state's looking for here is, is kind of forcing cities to allow more houses on places they would not have previously allowed them. Is that to say that, so if I own, let's say, a 1/4 acre lot, which in Atascadero may not be considered all that big, that's covered by sewer, et cetera, and that you've got to give up these standards that are listed here in order to allow me to fit an 800 square foot new house, in the backyard, so to speak. In other words, that these standards you've talked about are not hard and fast if they preclude somebody from putting up to an 800 square foot new house in their back, on their lot.
That's right, but you'd have to have a pretty tiny site to not make that work. In other words, if you had a quarter acre lot, which is about 10,000, 11,000 square feet, and you're going to create 2 5,000 square foot lots, and your coverage is only 40%, and your max unit size 800 square foot, you can probably meet all those. So you probably have to be down at a site the size of probably 2,000 square feet or less for a lot, or 3,000 square feet, to start eating into these requirements. It's going to be really, really tiny. So most of the cases, they'll apply.
I can see in a lot of I'll say typical cities, where they have rectangular lots, it might be very hard to put an 800 square foot structure in a backyard. But with Atascadero, we have a lot of uniquely shaped lots. We got a lot of uniquely sized lots, and sizes and shapes that may be very different than the neighboring lots. Can somebody say, well, the only place I can put this is in the front yard? Is that covered under this?
Well, there is a front yard setback that's required. That's our existing front yard setback that we currently have today, which is 20 feet. So those setbacks are still going to apply. The front setback still is going to apply. What they get relief on is the side and rear yard setback.
But around here, I mean, you might easily meet the 20-foot setback and then build this new unit out in front of your main house.
If you can meet the setback.
That could occur. Okay, got it. But the bottom line is, in terms of these limiting factors, the city would have to essentially waive those in order to allow somebody to fit an 800, up to an 800 square foot thing. That's very interesting. Did not realize that. Now, in terms of in the staff report, you mentioned somewhere that the fees, impact and capacity fees do not qualify for incentives. This is on the top of page 58. Starts on 57. The law states that if a parcel is subdivided subject to the law in a new unit will be built pursuant to the same law, and that's what you said. You now have an SB 9 lot that essentially has different rights and privileges than a regular lot. But new units built in accordance with SB 9, whether on an existing site or a new site, are subject to full city impact and capacity fees and do not qualify for the incentive. So we've discussed previously that ADUs under 750 square feet under some previous state legislation cannot be charged impact fees.
Yes.
So does this sentence mean that SB 9 units can be charged impact fees?
Yes.
So it kind of goes to a statement I think you earlier made then that if that in many cases it's not beneficial to the homeowner, they'd be better off building an ADU, a regular ADU under existing ADU law.
Probably yes.
Okay.
Unless there was no reason they couldn't do that for one reason or another, and SB 9 worked for them better for whatever reason.
Right. I'm trying to see how many instances that would be, because you've outlined and you showed a map on at the end of the staff report, and I thought you had a number somewhere around. You showed this, map that showed the eligible lots and a whole bunch of empty spaces where they apparently wouldn't be eligible.
Yeah, I think he gave us a number of 3,100.
That's what I thought.
And it seems to me the benefit, Councilmember Borbeau, would be if somebody wants 4 units total. That's the benefit. You do the lot split, you get 3 more units in addition to your current primary residence. So the ADU, you get 1 unit only.
Right. But based on the 40% lot split requirement, a whole bunch of these lots might be eligible to build an urban dwelling unit under SB 9, but would not be eligible for a lot split. Is that correct?
Yes, potentially, because they might not have enough street frontage. They might not have a good access for a new lot.
Right. I mean, they might be able to stick a, 500, 600, 700, 800 square foot house in the back, but there's no way in hell they'll be able to split off.
Yeah, very possible.
40% of the property in a lot split, because it's just not laid out that way.
Exactly.
So, and you don't have any idea, because these are unique lots, you don't have any idea out of those 3,100 how many might actually be eligible for a lot split, right?
No, we don't have that data yet.
And if I can build an SB 9 urban dwelling unit in my backyard, let's say, if I can do that, but I can't do a lot split, then I can't get to 4 units, right? I can just get to the
2 units.
The 2 units, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of these, there's the mention of the parcels with jurisdictional waters, archaeological sites, yada, yada, yada. The state passed this law. They want to encourage building presumably small houses because they're relatively more affordable. And of course, cities are concerned about, houses sprouting up where they weren't previously authorized. But my question and concern revolves around not making it more difficult for somebody to build than it would be under ADU law. And so I'm concerned about the requirements for like covered porches and those sort of things, or building where there's, I understand safety, things like fire, access, sewer, but we don't, jurisdictional waters have an impact on building, but they don't restrict somebody from building, right? I mean, they could, but they don't automatically preclude somebody from building an ADU.
No, just because they have a 1 acre property in the far corner of it has a creek going across it, that's not going to stop it. But it's the same to say is, if there's a creek going through the center of the property and this proposed lot split is going to cause significant impacts to the site, there's no other way around it, then that's a limiting factor that we should look at.
That would be a limiting factor on an SB9 split that wouldn't come into play if they just wanted to build an ADU on the other side of the drainage. Okay. Because I guess my point is I don't want to make it harder on somebody to build under this than it already is. I mean, because if I'm building an ADU, I don't have to have a covered porch, do I? Or a storage or a laundry room?
No, unless we put those into our pre-designed stock plans, and that's what you get.
Well, but the pre-designed stock plans are intended to make.
To make it easier. The idea is not to make it more difficult. The idea is to have quality though and neighborhood compatibility. And each community is allowed to have these objective design standards. And this is generally what a lot of communities are doing. Because there's such a substantial increase in density, we want to make sure it comes along with quality and neighborhood compatibility and some design features.
Okay, but we are talking about some design features that are not required of an ADU.
That's right.
Okay, so that does concern me a bit that we're imposing a burden on folks that I'm not seeing necessarily you just gave a great explanation, but I'm not necessarily comfortable with that. Okay, I think everybody else kind of covered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, so then back to Councilmember Daras and then Councilmember Funk.
All right, thank you. And thank you to Charles and Susan for the discussion on the election of development standards, because I thought I understood that, but now Phil, with your explanation of it, it makes much better sense. I understand what that is. So my question is just to follow up on this lot split thing, and we talked about the units that are potentially already existing on a lot. So I want to kind of give a scenario. If there's a lot with a primary, it's a big lot. Let's just say we've got a 2 acre lot or something, and we have a primary residence of 2,500, 3,000 square feet, and separated by a good enough distance, say a 1,200 square foot ADU that's already built, and the lot split would be such that these units would then be on the two new lots. Is that something that is going to be problematic, or would that be allowed? And then they would each be restricted to an SB9 unit on these each individual properties. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting 3 different messages at one time. Sorry, from the different colleagues. So this is on the vacant lot you're talking about?
No, I'm saying if you have an existing condition where it's a larger lot, let's say a 2 acre lot or something, we have a primary unit of a primary residence of say 2,500 square feet, and there's an existing 1,200 square foot ADU on the property already. So they have their house and their ADU and it's already constructed. They happen to be separated such that when they split the lot, each one of those units are now on their own individual lot. They're not on the same lot anymore. Does that still work where now all they can build is an SB9 unit on each one?
Yeah, I think they can still do that. They can't add to the size of that 1,200 square foot ADU, but they could build an SB9 unit on each of those properties then, based on whatever standards we have in place. I believe that's how it works. Yeah, I think over the last few days, as folks have asked questions about this ordinance, has caused us to think about a lot of these complexities that are out there that we haven't thought about yet. So this is really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Because that one just popped into my head, and I thought,
that's a good one.
It's going to be a problem because now you've got 4 units and only 2 of them are limited to the 800 square feet if that scenario exists, and I didn't know if that would be an issue. So anyway, thank you.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes. In the map that Councilmember Bourbeau was referring to on page 73, I see that we do have some areas in there that I recognize are neighborhoods governed by CC&Rs. Does SB9 override the CC&Rs, or do the CCNRs prevail? So if somebody who is in one of these areas wants to do an SB9 lot split or build an urban dwelling unit, do they have a right to do so, even if their CCNRs say, no, you can't do that?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's a lot of language on CCNRs. I think my staff's telling me that SB9 would rule in this case, but I know that's with ADUs, the ADU law overrules CCNRs and homeowners associations and even planned developments. I seem to think that's the same case with SB9. I'm going to have to refer to our legal staff to see whether that's in there.
Yeah, let's see if we, maybe Laura or
Kane is got his hand up now, so we should let him speak on that particular topic, and he could probably answer that question for us. I'm not familiar with that one.
Let's do that. Hi, Kane.
Hi, everybody. Yes, in contrast to the ADUs, which did have some references to HOAs, SB9 does not. SB9 is silent on HOAs, so there's no limitations from requiring that HOA approval be given before they do these lot splits, and there's no legal prohibition from HOAs if they themselves want to privately regulate this type of development within their own communities.
So you're saying that an HOA can say in their CCNRs, no SB9 lot splits, essentially?
Correct. There is no state law prohibition saying that they cannot do that.
And I believe the author of SB9 had said that right before it passed. That was part of the conversation that had been going on in the legislature.
Would the CCNRs need to be amended then in order to then prohibit any sort of a lot split under SB9?
Yes, if the HOA wanted to enforce that, they would have to amend their own bylaws in order to do that.
But without that language in the CCNRs, then an HOA would have to honor a lot split under SB9. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be a civil issue between the owner and the HOA at that point.
Okay.
Thank you, Kane.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Councilmember Borbo.
Yeah, you had a slide up, Phil, regarding the occupancy. And it clarified for me that logically you would occupy one of the units. But if you did an urban lot split under SB9, you created this secondary lot, you previously answered that you could then sell the lot, but you're supposed to sign this affidavit that you're going to live on one of the, in one of the units for 3 years. And who, if anybody, is enforcing that, and how? I mean, is there a deed restriction on it so that they go to sell the, they sell the one lot, that's fine, but they go to sell the other lot, it would at least show up in a title report saying, hey, this, this lot requires, residence or something.
So right now in the Senate bill, they just sign a declaration which promises that they will live on that property. We could, with our urgency ordinance, go as far as putting that into a deed restriction as well. We don't have that in this particular urgency ordinance, but enforcement is going to be up to our department. It's going to be up to the city to go out and enforce that. The state's not going to come after them. They are restricted by the covenant that they sign, or not the covenant they sign, but they'll sign a document that promises that. So it's a little bit loose. That's a little bit of a concern, the way that was written in the Senate bill. I think what happened is there was some folks that were really concerned about developer prospecting on SB9 sites. And so that was put in as a last minute change. And I don't know that a lot of thought was put to that, but that enforcement is up to us. And the regulation of how to administer that is up to us as a city.
Okay. All right, that's something I think we'll want to consider in the permanent ordinance. We don't need to, address it tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I think we are ready to go to public comment unless there are some burning questions. All right, I'm seeing none. So I'm going to go ahead and open up to public comment on this item. If you could please raise your hand. or press star 9 if you're on the phone. So we'll start with Jeff Oslin, followed by Deborah McCrell. And if I could ask for the timer to be on screen, please.
Sorry, didn't want to unmute.
All right, we hear you now. Or we did. Where did you go? Oh, I think Jeff Oslin completely dropped off the line. So we'll wait for him to come back and we'll go to Deborah McCrell.
Good evening again, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. This is really interesting, all that you're talking about here, and you've got really great questions. I have quite a few parcels that I own within the area that you're talking about that are currently rental properties. I also live within the area and have a parcel that could actually fit into this as well. There's one serious issue that I'm seeing, and that is, and I quote, served by sewer, end quote. So I have parcels that exceed an acre within that zone, plenty of space, for a septic system. I have another one on San Jacinto that happens to be, at the bottom of the hill, not served by any septic services. Pretty much really out of 6 properties that I would love to create more affordable housing, even if it meant living on one of them, that's doable in some cases. But it's completely unattainable because of that right there. And if you look at your map, obviously it's so splotchy. It looks like that's the reason why, the main reason, the sewer. Is there any way that there could be any consideration given to that, any exception or modification? I'd like to see that be addressed. And then I know it's a state law that they want a primary resident on one of those lots. But as I mentioned, I have a lot of potential parcels. Currently, just one single family home on an acre, for example. And it would be great to put a second unit on there and have them as rentals. So just trying to work with you in the city and to try to do what we can to create more good, affordable housing for people. So if you can keep those items in mind as you're making your recommendations, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McCrell. And let's see, I do see Mr. Oslin back if you want to raise your hand again. And if anyone else wants to speak, please raise your hand or press star 9 if you're on the phone. I see Jeff Oslin's hand. If you're speaking, you are not unmuted. Jeff, if you can hear us, you could be having some technical difficulties maybe with the webinar. I know somebody else was having that earlier today. You may want to call in on the 805-538-2888 number. And I'm not seeing anyone else who wants to speak. Let's do this really quick. Let's get that sorted out. Why don't we take a quick break? We've been going almost 3 hours and we still have quite a bit to go plus closed session. So let's take a brief break. Maybe we can get Jeff on screen and let's come back at 9 o'clock. All right? Thanks. right, let's go ahead and resume if everyone could come back. Still waiting. There we go. Councilmember Funk. And let's see. Heather, you are here. I see you. All right. So we will, we just came back from a break and let's see if we can, we're still in the middle of public comment. So let's resume that. And if Mr. Oslin is able to come back on and provide public comment. And if there's anyone else wishing to provide public comment on this item regarding the SB 9 urgency ordinance, please raise your hand or press star 9 if you're on the phone.
So
Luke,
Jeff
did
has
we
called
ever
in.
figure out things with Jeff?
Yeah, he called into the public line, so I have him on the line now. So here's Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you, council. For crazy reasons, I guess I'm pulling a Charles Barbeau tonight and having bad internet connection. I apologize. So back on the urgency order, I have a few questions. The first one would be if one already has a home on the property, a junior ADU, and an ADU, would they be able to put 2 additional units on under SB 9? Question 1. Question 2 is, with the septic or sewage requirement, wouldn't it make sense to do a form of, if your lot size is large enough to handle the septic, you would not have to be on sewage? Let's say an acre or 2 acres and you're not in a bad sandy area and it's not going to put too much stress on the environment. Not sure, but seems like that just doesn't make as much sense. The next one would be, if I'm reading this right, you could take a 2 acre lot, have your original acreage with your house and a couple ADUs, split your lot into 2 1 acre parcels, and then build technically on a 1/2 acre and split again? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone else wishing to speak on this item, please do raise your hand now or press star 9 if you are on the phone. And Luke, I will go to you to see if there's anyone on the phone, as I'm not seeing any hands.
Yeah, we have no other callers at this time.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment then and bring it back to council. To answer some of those questions, yes, if you have a home, and Director Dunsmore, you can correct me if need be, if you have a home, an ADU and a JADU on a property, you can do the urban lot split, and then on the new created parcel, you could do 2 urban dwelling units.
I believe that you would have to still have 2 units in each lot, so you might have to subdivide so your detached accessory dwelling unit is on your other lot, and then you had the junior ADU and primary unit on the 1 lot. So I think that would be, that in essence would be utilizing both the ADU law and the SB 9 together to create more units. You'd end up with 5 units on a site designed for 1 unit in that scenario. And the scenario here that we're talking about would have a maximum of 4 units on a site originally designed to have 1 unit.
So do we know that for sure then, like the
Yes.
primary residence and the JADU would be considered 2 units even though they're attached
Yes.
on 1 lot, and the ADU would have to go to another one, and then you could do 1 more urban dwelling unit?
Correct.
Or not 1 more, but a urban dwelling unit. Okay.
That's right. That's our
Okay, thank you.
interpretation, yes.
With regards to septic, so both Mr. Oslin and Ms. McCrell brought that up. And right now we are being restrictive because we don't have the ability in the tight time frame that we've been given by the state to analyze everything that we need to make sure that we don't end up with septic problems. And so, Director, I think that's something that we've discussed a little bit tonight, but that is something that we can look at is depending on soils and lot sizes, is there the ability to allow for some of these, additional dwelling units, when you start to say dwelling unit, it could mean anything, but these new units with the urban lot splits, the potential on septic depending on size and soil, that's something we'll be looking at. We just don't have that information tonight.
That's right. And when we come back to you, we're going to come back to you with accessory dwelling unit policies at the same time. And there will be a proposal there to allow accessory dwelling units on sites that are served by on-site wastewater septic system. And it'll be based on lot size criteria and areas in the city. The same could be done for SB9 units, but because of the number of units that could be created from one site, there's a little bit more that has to be taken into consideration. And so we'll have to look at our local area management plan, our LAMP, to be able to make sure we're consistent with that.
Absolutely. That's a big concern because we've done a lot of work on that, and we have a really healthy system with using that LAMP, and we want to make sure that we maintain that. Another question that Mr. Oslin had was, being able to split a second time. My understanding from what you've said and reading everything is you cannot do that. You do one lot split, they're deed restricted, so to speak, as SB9 lots, and they cannot split again.
That's exactly it. And that's very clear in the state code.
Okay. And then the last thing Ms. McCrell asked was about, needing to be owner occupied, and that is a state requirement. Is that something that we can change if we want? Do we have flexibility with that if we see on a case-by-case basis that there's some, that there's a benefit to that, or is that?
It does not appear that one has flexibility based on the way the state law was written.
Okay. All right. Thank you for answering those. So tonight what we want to take a look at is, again, this urgency ordinance. So let's focus in first on that. And then if there's some extra things where we say, hey, like septic, keep these things in mind as you're putting together the more formal ordinance that'll come to us in about 6 months or so. But let's discuss the urgency ordinance now. Any changes other than we've got the staff changes, and Director, do you guys have an opportunity to go and do some of that clarification of wording that Councilmember Funk was asking for?
Yes, we've been passing back some various wording between our legal staff. I think we're there. So I think we can read to you some clarifications.
Okay.
Laura, I'll ask Laura at the very end to make sure we have all of the corrections. So might need just a quick minute on that.
Okay.
But we can do that while we're talking.
Okay, fabulous. So we can hold off on that for a moment. Councilmember Funk, I see that you wanted to start off.
Yeah, just while we're awaiting that discussion on language, I wondered if I could follow up on Ms. McCrell's question, and to clarify that these are, we're talking about the SB9 specifics, but did we in the current temporary ordinance that we have for the ADUs, did we allow people to put them on units that are on properties that are served by septic systems if things were large enough?
Yes.
Okay, so there's and that doesn't require owner occupancy, does it?
No.
Wasn't there an owner occupancy? I thought there was something in there. It had they could do the ADU or the J, like they had to be somewhere on the property, I thought.
I think that's with the junior ADU. The main thing there was no vacation rental. I'm getting confused now because
we'll bring it all back. Let's come down to the urgency.
We did allow them on sites with septic as long as they were at least an acre.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That's helpful to know that homeowners have an option that they can use now while we wait to sort out the rest of the SB9 stuff. Or they can wait for us to to get there in 6 months or so.
So if you could bring that language up and let's see if that is helps to clarify as my colleague requested.
Yes. All right, we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Laura, are you gonna, I'm just trying to see what we've got here. Keep changing them to the last minute. Might need another just a quick minute on the language.
Okay, and I am told that we have a member of the public that has one more question, and I don't normally do this, so I'm going a little off script tonight. We're reopening and reopening. So I'm gonna reopen public comment one more time, one last question. And if you don't get all your questions answered tonight, just know, folks, please reach out, let us know, you know, if you've got property, you want to know if it's located in an area, what your options are. We're here to help you and support you with that. If you don't get all your questions answered tonight, or you think of something, you know, 5 days from now, like reach out. We want to get all your questions answered. So Luke, if you'll go ahead and bring on our member of the public, and we will get that last question answered.
Yes, it's Jeff Austin once again. Councilmember Funk brought up a question regarding the water main, and I think it's an important one to consider. I think if you have to put this many units on, it may require actually an upgrade of the water meter from a 3/4 to a 1-inch line, and that's very cost prohibitive. Just curious if we know that answer. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other members of the public wishing to speak, please raise your hand or press *9, let Luke know. And all right, I'm not seeing any. We will go ahead and close public comment again. Director Dunsmore, if you have the answer to that question, or if that's something that we are going to be, again, figuring out as we go about putting together the final ordinance.
I think we'd like to wait for the final ordinance on that question.
Perfect. All right. So do you have the wording yet?
I think we do. I was just waiting for concurrence from our legal team. And Laura, would you like to read the final wording, or would you like me to read that?
You want to go ahead, Phil?
All right. Let me just get the section numbers here. I've got to go back to my slide. I've got, we've been exchanging multiple messages here over the past hour. So we have a lot of language to go through here. Primarily, the one thing that needs to get worked out is the discussion about urban dwelling units. On page 64 of your packet, there is a section 3E1. And a proposal is to change that to wait a minute. Still, I'm reading the language that I was just given. It doesn't apply to that one. There's 3 of them. If you give me just a moment, I need to.
Hey, Phil,
it's nice that you no, that's fine. It's nice that you pointed that one out, because that does confirm your answer to the question. No more than 2 urban dwelling units per lot may be developed, and primary dwelling units, urban dwelling units, accessory dwelling units, and junior ADUs constitute towards the maximum number of units. So
right, and I think on this one, just because there was confusion with the language per lot, even though this is addressing urban dwelling units, where the other section addresses the lot split. So this one is really about the units and not the lot size. What we're suggesting is changing the language to read, no more than 2 dwelling units may be developed on any lot. That way it's clear that it's talking about any lot where someone is coming with an SB 9 application.
And that is for both the urban lot splits and the urban dwelling units, and the sections that are on page 64 and 67 under
and
4E1 that refer to both those. Yeah, excuse me for we just resolved this language in the last moments.
No, that's fine. And I know we need to be very particular with this. And so this is good that we're doing this. So
And page 67, 4E1 will alter just slightly different than that one to read no more than 2 dwelling units may be developed on either resulting lot.
Because that's a different section, speaking of the.
Right.
Perfect.
So since page 64, 3E1 is specifically for urban dwelling units, we're saying on any lot. And then 67, since it's pertaining to the lot splits, it's on either resulting lot. And then in the second paragraph, there's a will be, shall be, and we're striking through the will be.
It's also important to note on page 65 that we're completely striking 3E7, which reads, any proposed urban dwelling unit must be connected to a separate water service, separate meter.
And yes, and that's something that you had had up. And I know our member of the public who had actually wrote us in about that. And so, and is on tonight. So we thank you for that. We did get that corrected. And do you want to bring up some of that language just so we can look at the changes, and the members of the public who are here and watching can kind of see what the changes are that we've made? You had that up earlier, but just to confirm that.
You know, what I have up earlier, I still haven't changed on the screen. I'll bring that up and we can talk about where those sections are, but it's still not changed.
Okay.
In the slide yet.
No, I understand the new language isn't. I meant the other language, that just to, again, refresh everybody's memory with regards to the water meter and, you know, those changes that we made.
And then also just that there was that proposed change prior on page 69L, section L, about owner occupancy, and that the applicant for an urban lot split must be an existing owner and occupant of the subject lot.
Yeah, that was some.
That's this one right here that Phil's got up right now.
Yes.
Okay. And again, that is state law, correct, Phil?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So given the changes that have been made, you know, that we have up on the screen, the wording about, you know, any lot and then the resulting lot, are there any other changes that council members feel it's important to put forth for the urgency ordinance, or do we have a good urgency ordinance for the next 6 months while we're working on the final?
Let me ask a question before I say that, because I expressed a concern about some of the provisions requiring, you know, the covered porches, et cetera, but I can live with that if, you know, if we're really just talking 6 months. This being an urgency ordinance, and Phil, I mean, 6 months sounds like, in some ways it always sounds like a lot of time, but in other ways it goes by quickly. And you're talking about having to draft a permanent, full-blown ordinance that addresses these issues. And I know urgency ordinances can be extended. So I'm just looking for how realistic is it that we'll really be back in 6 months? You know, not asking for an urgency ordinance extension, but with a full, you know, with a full new ordinance to cover these issues.
6 months is a blink of an eye in our planning world. We already have your agenda and your staff report started for that.
That's why I asked. That's why I asked. You have a lot of writing to do and a lot of reading and studying to do, and and so I mean I can, you know, live with this stuff for 6 months, but I am concerned about us imposing, you know, limitations on some of these things that might be over and above what we impose on a regular ADU. And I understood a little bit your rationale, but I think that is a concern, because you know, the premise of this stuff is to allow for the building of typically smaller units that would make them more affordable by design. And then by us requiring certain things we don't require for other ADUs, it's you know, kind of defeats that purpose of trying to allow for more affordable housing, more relatively affordable housing. I always used the word relative in California.
Quite relative. Yeah. Well, and I understand what you're saying. And I think my concern comes from the fact that we're now creating 4 units where there was only 1. And so I understand the ADU argument, But as you pointed out, Councilmember Borbo, if somebody isn't doing a lot split and they're just going to do another unit, why not do an ADU? You pay fewer fees and you can have a bigger unit. I think that the bigger concern is if we're putting 4 units where only 1 was intended, or maybe 1 in an ADU, now you're really looking at neighborhood compatibility issues. And that I get wanting to have more housing. We need more housing. Everybody does. Yet if you're, a neighbor and suddenly next to you pops up 4 homes, like, you're going to care about that compatibility. I think that's important, that, neighborhoods that already exist aren't completely thrown into, disarray and concerned about, their quality of life too. So I think we need to be able to balance both of those.
Okay, but back to the original question, are we really going to be looking at this again in 6 months, or are we really talking more like, if we're lucky, sometime in 2022?
No, we really are working on this right now. We have the accessory dwelling unit portion almost completed. And I think with the feedback we've already heard tonight, and with the establishment of this urgency ordinance, it puts us a long way towards creating this side of it as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Almost better that those are done in concert, so that
Yes.
you're, some economies of scale there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also worth pointing out, Phil, that urgency ordinance are temporary and they have a time limit for how long they can be. So we can't just leave it going indefinitely. We would have to revisit, I believe, within the next 6 months anyway. So
Yes.
because it's an urgency ordinance, we are required by law to revisit. So there is that.
We're only allowed to extend that one time, right? Is that correct?
Go ahead, Kane.
If I may, just like a bit of a clarification, this isn't the same type of moratorium urgency ordinance that you have to extend by law. This is actually, hey, if we don't enact something immediately, there's going to be some significant health and public safety issue that will impact us. So that's why we're making it effective right away. But as a practical matter, I believe staff is trying as best they can to bring up a more complete SB9 and ADU ordinance together within the next 6 months. And if a little bit more time is needed, then that's up to staff. But it wouldn't automatically expire. If council wants to change it, it would be like any other ordinance. You guys could, amend it or change it when the time comes.
So the only aspect of it regarding the urgency is that it takes effect immediately. Otherwise, it's like.
That's correct. And because of the impending January 1 deadline, that's the main issue. This way we have some standards in place as opposed to none if we go the original traditional 2 reading route.
Understand. So in other words, it's like any other regular permanent ordinance, other than it takes effect more quickly because of the 4/5 vote requirement.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. But
are my colleagues good with the urgency ordinance as we've put the amendments together? I kind of want to pull us together into this, get a few comments, and we still have some things to get through tonight. So any issues with the urgency ordinance, the way it has been amended?
No, I'm good with it the way it's been modified.
Okay, and I think Charles is, Susan, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I had planned to propose switching the order of those things on page 66, but I think for the purposes of the next 6 months, I can live with that. And it doesn't sound like this is going to be happening really often, that we would have properties where that would take effect. So let's just not worry about that. I'm good, for right now. And we can revisit the whole, second story issue when we come back. Now, I'd point out that while we're enacting something, that we're basically relying on the goodwill of staff and each other to meet the commitment that we're going to come back to this within 6 months. That is within the term of the current council. So it's not complicated by any issues of change.
Okay, so it looks like we've got consensus on that. And in terms of, moving forward, Director, I think you heard from us just in terms of, on septic, similar to the ADUs, what is the possibility there of allowing something, the design standards, how strict do we need to be? So it's kind of keeping certainly the spirit and the intent of the law, while also maintaining, neighborhood compatibility and of course, health and safety paramount. Do you have a good sense from us from tonight of the things that we're looking for in a permanent ordinance?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right. Then I will look to one of my colleagues to make a motion. And is it, I'm going to ask our city clerk, is it sufficient to say as amended, or do you need the maker of the motion to read through every change that has been made?
No, we'll be okay with as amended since we've already read those.
Wonderful.
Into the record, yeah.
All right, Councilmember Funk.
I'll move approval of the urgency ordinance as amended.
Great.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Funk, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. Roll call, please.
I actually need to read the title first.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. Urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Atascadero, California, adopting interim guidelines for the implementation of Government Code Sections 65852.21 and 66411.7. Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Warbo?
Yes.
Councilmember Dares?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom?
Yes.
Mayor Moreno?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, on to item number 3, public hearing number 3, the Community Facilities District Annexation number 24. Do we have any ex parte on this item? All right, seeing none, I will turn this over to, again, Community Development Director, Mr. Phil Dunsmore.
All right, and I'm going to introduce our senior planner, Kelly Gleason, to present CFD annexation number 24.
And we are seeing the same kind of display, the presentation presenter.
No, you are. Maybe Phil can give me advice on how we fixed that last time.
Phil's muted.
You're muted, Phil.
Thank you. Kelly, go back to the screen where you can see all the screens that you can share. And
there you go.
There you go. You got it.
Oh, is that it? Okay, I've got it on 2 screens then, so it's different. Okay. So the next item is one of the steps in our standard process for annexing a project into our standard community facilities district. So this would be annexation number 24, and it's a subdivision on Halcon Road. So a little bit of background, we did establish our citywide community facilities district in 2005. The state does allow the formation of districts to provide financial mechanism for new properties that receive services. So our current community facilities district covers police, fire, and parks services for new residential units. This project was conditioned to be fiscally neutral, and the way that they achieve that is through annexation into the CFD. I apologize, the screen says 23. It's annexation number 24. It's adjacent to the Cerro Roble development. And if you recall, this property is only a 3-parcel subdivision, which we don't normally see for annexation, but because this was part of a larger general plan amendment and planned area that includes the Cerro Roble development and properties to the north of that, they are required to annex into the CFD. So in October of this year, we did hold our hearing where the council approved the intent to annex as a resolution. And then we did record that boundary map at the county recorder's office in anticipation of this hearing. So for the standard hearing, the council will open the public hearing. We'll then close the public hearing and consider draft resolution A, which establishes the annexation of territory into the CFD. We'll then close that hearing and hold a landowner election. Our city clerk will announce the results of the vote. And then the city council will certify the election and introduce for first reading draft ordinance A to authorize the annexation for annexation number 24. So that does conclude our presentation. If there are any questions, we're happy to answer those. And as we go through that process, I'll put that slide back up for you.
Thank you, Ms. Gleason. I will look to my colleagues to see if there are any questions of staff. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and open up public comment on this item. If you'd please raise your hand or press *9 on the phone if there's anyone wishing to speak on this item. Luke, do we have anyone on the phone?
We do not.
All right, I will go ahead and close public comment. And unless there's any council comments, I would look to a motion to approve draft resolution A.
Also move. I'll second.
Motion by, I think that was Councilmember Funk, and then second by Councilmember Borbeau. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Borbeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
We will now give the city clerk a moment to count the ballots for the annexation.
Okay, we're counted.
All right. And would you like to report back?
Yes, there was one ballot for a total of 6 votes. All were in favor.
Thank you. Are there any council comments? Seeing no comments, I will ask if I have a motion to approve draft resolution B.
Also move.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilmember Borbeau, second by Mayor Pro Tem Newsom. And now the city clerk will read the title of the draft ordinance.
Is the motion also for introduction of the ordinance?
Yes, both the
Yes, correct.
resolution B and reading of the ordinance.
Perfect, thank you. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Atascadero, California, authorizing the levy of special taxes in Community Facilities District number 2005-1, public services, including certain annexation territory. Councilmember Borbeau,
Yes.
Councilmember Funk,
Yes.
Councilmember Daris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Newsom,
Yes.
Mayor Moreno.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, now we have no management reports tonight. And so now we're on to council announcements and committee reports. And so I will go around on the screen here and start with Councilmember Borbeau.
I think you've had God, I don't know how many IWMA meetings, but it's had one today, an special executive committee meeting where we will bring forth to the full board the employment of an interim executive director at a special meeting next week. We've held, I think, since our last council meeting, our ad hoc committee meeting for the revision of the joint powers agreement. We had some draft changes from our attorney reflecting the county's kind of ensuring that all elements, everywhere the word county was mentioned was addressed, and some other things, that the cities had asked for, specifically language limiting the IWMA to only adopting ordinances that are in the future that are required by to meet state mandates. But there were other changes asked for by different entities. Our council has come up with a draft, and that'll be rotated around, and it's being circulated now to city managers, CSD general managers, and we'll have another committee meeting in the first week of January, and then hopefully have a final joint powers agreement amendment to bring back to the cities for ratification. We're still working on the IWMA's rate increase, hauler fee rate increase to cover the additional cost of implementing 1383. And that's just the additional cost relative to what the IWMA is involved with. So we're having some special meetings regarding that with the consultant, et cetera. And also the cities in their resolutions about remaining in the IWMA had, generally speaking, requested a third-party consultant look at things, and we're arranging a special meeting to consider a contract for that. So lots of different things happening, and so, I'm sure more to report next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Daris.
I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Funk.
Yes, like Councilmember Borbeau, I'm having a busy week. Tomorrow, I've got a 1 o'clock meeting of the Homeless Services Oversight Council Executive Committee, our standard bi-monthly for that group. Then on Thursday, we have Mayor Pro Tem Newsom and I have the Design Review Committee. We're looking at 2 things in that, and that meeting starts at 1 o'clock rather than 2 o'clock as usual. And we're looking at the ADU stock plans that were referenced earlier in our discussion tonight, which are designed to, in a multi-city effort, make it easier and less expensive and less complicated and faster for homeowners to develop ADUs on their properties. So this is our first look at the proposed stock plans and different designs and sizes and styles. And then there's a 10-unit apartment complex that will be reviewed at 2505 El Camino Real in that meeting. And then at 2:30 tomorrow, which is why we moved DRC earlier, I have a meeting of the steering committee of the 0 to 10-year planning for addressing homelessness countywide. And that group is meeting on a monthly basis. It's not a Brown Act committee, but it is affiliated with HSOC, which is the Homeless Services Oversight Council. And we are hip deep in data right now, looking to really understand how people are flowing through the system or not flowing through the system, and understand where the opportunities for better effectiveness, better efficiency may lie in this process, and to make sure that as we start to come forth with some recommendations and ideas and incorporate the results of the survey just completed, that we are well grounded in real data and what's actually happening, so that the solutions address the best points where there's leverage, as opposed to just randomly doing good stuff.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Newsom.
As my colleague mentioned, we do have the DRC meeting. That's all I have this week.
All right, thank you. And let's see, I had a SLOCOG meeting last week. Kerberell Park and Ride is going to get 2 level 2 solar powered charging stations and will be free to users. So very, very good news there. And there's about $7.8 million in community betterment and safe street money available. And then potentially another $4 million. So either we'll be augmenting the RTIP or possibly devoting some to new projects. We'll see, as with everything, like we saw with CDBG tonight, but on a much larger scale. There are huge needs and not enough money to fill them. But certainly Atascadero has some projects that we think meet a lot of those good criteria for being shovel ready, a lot of local match already available. So we'll see what happens. But right now there's some other big projects in the hopper. An interesting one right now is the 227. If any of you have had to travel 227, particularly at that 5 p.m. timeframe, it gets pretty crowded. The recommendation from Caltrans, which has been ongoing for some time, is to do some roundabouts. And we've had residents in the area actually quite unhappy with the recommendation and kind of coming forward. So we paused that discussion in December to have a bigger discussion in February with the public commenting on that particular project. So let's see, I attended a Google Fiber meet down in San Luis last week. Lorelei Capel, who's in economic development and community, I forget her full title, but with us, she also attended. Very, very interesting in terms of broadband in this one particular model for how cities can go about implementing. So another interesting thing too is Maria Kelly, who now is consulting with the Pacific Broadband Consortium. She is going to be coming to the mayor's meeting this Friday and really talking about the real key is going to be, no city can go it alone. We can't go get funding. There's so much state funding available, but there's no way that we can go qualify for funding as an individual city with 11 to 12,000 households and the number of businesses that we have. We're going to need to come more regionally to request those funds. So my hope is that there is that desire countywide for us to be moving in that direction, because some of those deadlines are coming up soon in order to request some of that funding. So we are working on that. And let's see. I think that is, yeah, that's all I have for right now. So let's move on to individual determinations or actions, if we have any of those. Councilmember Darris.
Just a couple of quick announcements for anybody that might still be watching.
So we're on announcements because I went on to individual determination or action. So you want
this isn't really an announcement. It has nothing to do with any of the committees I'm on.
okay,
it's
an
announcement, but it's
yeah, I should probably say this. So in the future, we can lump all those together. That's what we've started.
Okay,
doing.
well, I didn't want to do it under the committee report.
That's okay.
So, but Toys for Tots, there's one more day to contribute if people would like to contribute to that. Several boxes around town to be able to contribute. Kiwanis Club will be picking those up on Thursday to sort and then distribute in the next few days or next week. And then also I'd like to give a shout out also to the Kiwanis Club for the work they did at the senior center for cleaning up and repainting in the kitchen and removing some stuff and turning it into a more functional space for them. And with that also Don Idler for removing two dysfunctional or broken down refrigerators to get them out of there. Now they have a better space to work in, but a lot of work being done around the community with Kiwanis, and the senior center now is in a much better position with their kitchen area. So I just wanted to announce that and give them a shout out.
See, I'm assuming Charles has got to say something about Rotary now.
Well, I was just going to say, Mark, I hope you noticed the outside was freshly painted recently by the Rotary Club.
All right. Yes, okay. Let's all mention a little something. Go ahead, Councilmember Funk.
In addition to wishing everybody the most joyous of holidays, want to remind people that as school gets out for the holidays, that kids are going to be more around. And this is a really important time for us to drive gently and be respectful of everybody's families and visitors and so forth, so that we all come through the holidays safely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And I do have an announcement under individual determination action. I have a new planning commissioner. My planning commission appointee has had some personal challenges and needed to step down from the planning commission. So I will be appointing Greg Heath and have put him in touch with both Laura and Phil. And so we will have a full planning commission. And with that, we will go ahead and I will recess our regular meeting to closed session. And I do need to have a roll call, please.
I'm not sure you need a roll call.
Well, it was on my agenda, so I'm going by agenda, assuming that's exactly according to the letter of the law. So
sorry about that. You don't need a roll call.
I don't need a roll call.
Have not done a separate meeting, so we're good on that one. Sorry that got.
That's okay. That's okay. All right. So I'm going to, in a moment, ask our city attorney to let you know what we are going into closed session about. If you do want to speak on the closed session item, he will be announcing that in just a moment. If you're watching, you can call 805-538-2888 to provide public comment, or of course you can raise your hand. So if we could now get our city attorney to let us know what our closed session items are about.
And we have two closed sessions tonight. One of them is a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. That's initiation of litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4. That's one case. The other matter is a conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. That's authorized by Government Code Section 54956.9D1. The name of that case is Sunderland versus the City of Atascadero and Phil Dunsmore. The Superior Court case number is 21 CVP 0074.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Luke, is there anyone on the phone?
There is not.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public comment now, and we will recess to closed session. If there is a reportable action of any kind, we will report out at our next meeting, which will be January 11th, I believe. Laura, is that the right date?
You are correct, January 11th.
January 11th. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to leave this Zoom meeting and go into our closed session meeting. Do council members all have the link? All right. Well, everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. We'll see you in January. Bye-bye.